Chapter 891. The headquarters of Eurasian Comics was still a little far from where she lived. The drive took a total of 40 minutes, and with the walking time, it was nearly an hour. It was 9:50 when she arrived at Eurasian Comics. Several people had arrived at the scene for the interview. Presumably, there were not many people to be recruited this time, so there were very few people. After interviewing a few people, Yu Lily's name was called. Yu Lily was wearing the clothes that she bought yesterday. It was very ordinary, but the style was not bad. The company's executives inside had a good impression of this girl. Yu Lily introduced herself, and the executives also looked at her resume. They simply asked a few questions, such as what work she had done, why she left, and her impression of the company, or why she chose this company. Yu Lily answered them one by one and seemed to be at ease. Then, they asked Yu Lily to wait for the notice as usual. As expected, Yu Lily felt that she did a good job, so she was in a good mood. She walked out of Eurasian Comics and looked at the time. It was already past 11 o'clock. She called Oh Ming, and he answered the phone very quickly. Yu Lily didn't even realize that the phone had been connected, and she heard the sound of driving over there. After coming to herself, Yu Lily asked, "Hey, Oh Ming, where are you?" "I'm going to pick you up." "Where are you?" "I'm now at XX intersection." "Well, stand still, and I'll be there in 5 minutes." After that, Oh Ming hung up the phone. Yu Lily felt a little strange. He actually arrived in 5 minutes? Did Oh Ming know where I was, and then he came here to pick me up? Yu Lily felt a little sweet in her heart, and her lips unconsciously raised. Standing on the side of the road, Yu Lily picked up her lipstick to touch up her makeup. Not long after she put the lipstick away, she heard the sound of a car coming. It was a stretch Lincoln. Oh Ming's car window was down, and Yu Lily clearly saw Oh Ming wearing sunglasses sitting in the car. So handsome. Yu Lily's smile became wider and wider. She opened the door and quickly walked in. "Are you hungry? What do you want to eat?" Oh Ming took off his sunglasses and asked. "I want to eat noodles." "Let's go eat noodles." Yu Lily smiled like a flower. Seeing her smile, Oh Ming was also in a good mood. He put on his sunglasses, started the car, and drove in the direction of a noodle house that Yu Lily used to like. Yu Lily used to be a regular customer, and Oh Ming often came here as well. The manager inside knew Yu Lily. When he saw her, he immediately greeted her and shouted, "Miss Yu, Master Oh, long time no see. Please come in." Yu Lily and Oh Ming walked into a private room. After ordering, Yu Lily went to the bathroom. There was no bathroom in the private room, but there were several in the noodle house. Yu Lily was a regular here, so she was familiar with the location of the restroom. Now was the peak period, and there were many people coming and going in the restroom. If he went to the nearest restroom, he would definitely have to line up. Yu Lily walked to the end of the corridor, where there were fewer people in the bathroom. Chapter 892. The woman surnamed Yu is here again. I thought she was not in Kingstown. The voice belonged to the manager who had just received Yu Lily. Yu Lily stopped in her tracks. She was in no hurry to open the door. That's right. But Oh Ming didn't come here with this woman a while ago. This man is different when he's rich. He has both a fiancé and a mistress. He's so happy. The voice sounded like she was touching up her makeup. I'm so happy. Isn't that so? But Oh Ming seems to have been with that woman surnamed Yu for a long time. Why is that fiancé still willing to be with him? I heard that the fiancé is also famous in the capital. Needless to say, a man like Oh Ming is rich and handsome. Although he is a bit fickle, he also has the capital to be fickle. If I can keep up with such a man, I would rather marry him. Do you want to go to the toilet? No, you go. I'm leaving. Yu Lily heard one of them go next door and the other go out. There was an impulse in his heart to go forward and give all of them a tight slap in the face. However, she couldn't move her feet. Didn't he say that he didn't like the fiancé? Didn't he say that he wouldn't marry Shen Manting? Then why did he come to eat noodles with her? And it was a place she liked to come to. She never knew that the service staff here thought of her in this way. Yu Lily. Haha. Oh Ming called her surname Yu, which was just a title. But when outsiders called her that, Yu Lily could clearly feel the contempt and disdain in their words. Her heart felt like it was pressed by a stone, and she was depressed. Her throat was choked, and her eyes were hot. She opened her mouth, and the air came in. Lily looked up at the ceiling. What a loser. After a while, the sound of pumping water came from next door. Hearing the sound of high heels going away, Lily stood in the toilet for a long time before she went out. When she washed her hands and walked back to the box, the noodles were already served. Ming turned his head and easily found that Lily's mood seemed to be not quite right. She seemed to be a little depressed than before. What's wrong? Ming asked softly and reached out to pull her. Lily shook her head and smiled. She picked up the chopsticks and said, "Let's eat. I'm starving." Ming looked at her, trying to read something from her face. However, Lily was sitting on the side, eating her noodles with her head down. She didn't look any different from usual. After eating, Ming drove to Kongqing First Chinese Medicine Hospital. After Ming explained the symptoms to the doctor, the old doctor suggested that Lily undergo acupuncture. After he was done with the acupuncture, he took a few pills and walked out with Lily. Ming knew the reason for her coldness, but he didn't tell the doctor. Lily didn't realize why, but she was still a little absent-minded on the way home. His mind was filled with the words of the two waiters. Hugging one in each hand, "I'm so happy. We're here." Ming's voice brought her back to reality. Lily looked up, smiled, and opened the car door. But before she opened the door, Ming held her hand. Ming looked at her and said, "What's wrong with you? You don't seem to be in a good mood this afternoon." Death. Chapter 893. At least, it was much worse than when he had just picked her up. Lily's back was stiff. She turned her head to look at Ming and smiled gently. Ming's eyes darkened. He reached out to pinch her face and said, "Don't look like that. Smiling is uglier than crying." Lily pouted and touched her cheek that had just been pinched. She lowered her head and asked, "Did I?" "Yes." Ming looked at her with a serious face and said, "What's wrong? Tell me." If I find out that you are lying, I will punish you." Ming pinched her nose intimately and tenderly. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Pursing her lips, she smiled and said, "I just heard something not so good." Ming raised his eyebrows and motioned for her to continue. "And I heard that you once took Shen Manting to that noodle house," Lily said. When Ming heard that, his face darkened and he asked, "Who said that?" "The waiter said that they knew me, you, and Shen Manting. I heard it clearly in the toilet. They looked down on me and said that I was your mistress. They thought you were very happy because you had a fiancé and a mistress, and you could hug them on both sides." Lily didn't forget to observe his face as she spoke. When she saw that Ming's expression was getting uglier and uglier, she couldn't help but ask, "Is it true?" Ming's face was not very good, and he explained, "Shin Manting also likes to come to this noodle house. Last time my mother specially asked her to come to me and let us have a meal together. Shen Manting took me there and told everyone that I was her fiancé." When Lily heard that, she immediately understood. She lowered her head and said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? If I had known that she had been here, I wouldn't have come. It's so annoying. I feel like I'm being stabbed in the back." "I forgot." Ming looked at her and seemed to be a little helpless. "I only remember that you like to eat at this noodle house. How could I remember what that woman did to me? Besides, it's been almost a year. It's been a long time. Besides, I don't think it's a big deal, so I didn't tell you." "Oh." Lily was a little unhappy again. She pouted and looked at Ming. "Then, what kind of matter is considered a big deal? Do you know that when I was in the bathroom just now, I almost cried when I heard about it? I thought. What do you think?" Ming pinched her face. "You're a bad person. If I hadn't seen through you and kept asking you, were you going to keep this secret and live with me?" Lily shrank her head and felt a little guilty. As soon as Ming saw her cowardly look, he knew he was right. Ming pinched her face in disappointment. He sighed and said, "Shin Manting is a European-style young mistress chosen by my mother. This woman is not as beautiful as you, nor is she as sensible as you. It's just that her family background is good. It's a pity that she's already spoiled. I think she'll come looking for you. Yeah, he's already called me once. I can tell that he's very arrogant, but he also sounds like a retard." Chapter 894. Trust. It was a simple word, but when it came to doing it, it wasn't so simple. There was too much between the two of them. Did Yu Lily really believe Ming completely? Not really. But now, she had no other choice, right? Yu Lily heard Ming's words and nodded. She looked at him with a pair of bright eyes and didn't speak. Ming looked at her hair with a little heartache. He reached out and touched her hair. Keep your hair long. You look more beautiful with long hair. Okay. Yu Lily's mood was already a lot better. She leaned over and kissed Ming on the face. You go back to the company. I'll go home to paint. Ming's eyes seemed to be floating misty and deep. Just when Yu Lily was about to withdraw, his big hands held her, and he lowered his head to kiss her lips. He gently sucked, and his tongue gently pried open her teeth. Yu Lily hugged him with both hands, and the smile on her face widened. She was in a good mood again. Ming's heart was like a mirror. He smiled, held her face, and gently bit her lips. He whispered, "In the future, no matter what you hear, you have to tell me the truth. Many things are not as you think. I want to be with you, and I am serious. I don't want to marry Shen Manting, and I am not lying. Soon, I will break off the engagement with her and marry you." Ming was a person who valued his promises, and he didn't make promises easily. But once he made a promise, he would keep it. Yu Lily nodded, and her heart warmed. Holding him with both hands, Yu Lily raised her head and kissed his chin again. She said, "I will wait for you. I also have to work hard to make money, so that I can be worthy of you." She didn't want to be called a mistress anymore. Never again. Ming's smile froze, and he nodded. He rubbed her short hair and whispered, "To be my woman, you don't need to be rich. As long as I like you, that's enough. It just so happens that I like you. I like every part of you. There is no ideal type in the world. It's just that one day, someone suddenly breaks into your world and catches your eye, so he becomes your favorite ideal type. This kind of coincidence is not as simple as a coincidence." Yu Lily burst out laughing. "I didn't expect you to have such awareness." Then, she pushed him away and opened the car door. "I'm leaving. I'll be waiting for you to come back after I've prepared dinner." "Okay." Ming smiled and nodded. Yu Lily got out of the car and looked back every few steps. Soon, she walked into the lobby of the community. After Ming watched her walk in, he started the car and headed back to the company. Unbeknownst to him, a beautiful pink car had been parked outside the neighborhood for a long time. A beautiful woman was sitting inside. She had already seen the intimate interaction between Yu Lily and Ming. The coffee cup in her hand was slightly squeezed. Her slender and fair palm gently rubbed against it. She exerted force without making a sound, causing the coffee cup to be slightly deformed. After the Lincoln limousine drove away, Shen Manting got out of her car. He took a step forward and walked to the door. Shen Manting was stopped by the security guard at the entrance. "Miss, you don't live here, right?" Chapter 895. When the security guard heard that, he frowned and said, "What's the name of the person you mentioned?" Ming. Ming's name was like thunder to the ears. The security guard naturally recognized him, but he had never seen Shen Manting. The security guard hesitated, took out the pager, called his colleague and said, Old Lee, check whether the owner of the 28th floor is back. There is a Miss Shen visiting." Yu Lily just got out of the elevator, entered the password, and opened the door, and the doorbell inside kept ringing. It came from the lobby. Yu Lily pressed the answer button, and soon the face of the security guard appeared. "Hello, this is the lobby, and there is a Miss Shen visiting." "Shen?" Yu Lily laughed in her heart. "Speak of the devil, and he will come." Could it be that this Shen fellow was still monitoring her? However, Yu Lily still pretended not to know her, slightly raised her voice and said, "Shen? I don't know a friend with the surname Shen. Are you looking for the wrong person?" Hearing that, the security guard looked at Shen Manting with a very strange look and said, "This Miss Shen said that she is Mr. O's fiancée." "Are you kidding? If everyone says that she is Ming's fiancée, won't he be busy?" Yu Lily's voice was a little impatient, and she yawned, and her attitude was a little sloppy. "Don't ask me this kind of thing in the future. Just drive her away. That's all. I'm hanging up." As she spoke, Yu Lily hung up the phone. After hanging up, she was secretly happy. Yu Lily almost jumped up and happily walked into the room. She put the second-hand digital tablet that she bought yesterday on Ming's computer. Opening Photoshop, Yu Lily began to practice drawing with her hands. Being an original IP was far better than being a painter. If it sold well, she might also have the copyright of TV series, games, and so on. In that case, wouldn't she gain both fame and fortune? Yu Lily was painting and daydreaming at the same time, and she was in a very good mood. However, Shen Manting's mood was a little bad. After being asked by the security guard with a serious face, her face immediately changed. After returning to the car, Shen Manting dialed Ming's number. However, it was not Ming who answered the phone. It was Ming's assistant, Su Cheng. Su Cheng held the phone and said respectfully, "Good afternoon, Miss Shen." Shen Manting heard Su Cheng's words and was a little annoyed. She shouted, "Where is Ming?" "Master O is busy. He is currently discussing the contents of the contract with foreign partners. The overseas investment case is white hot. If Miss Shen has nothing important, please don't disturb Master O easily." Su Cheng's attitude was neither cold nor indifferent, but the content expressed was very clear. When Shen Manting heard Su Cheng's words, she was so angry that smoke came out of her body. She shouted, "Is this how you talk to your future wife?" Su Cheng secretly sneered in his heart, but his tone was still the same as before. He said, "Miss Shen, Master O is really busy. How about I send you a short video?" Shen Manting felt even more annoyed and sneered, "Fine, let's do it." After that, Su Cheng hung up the phone. Then, he used Ming's mobile phone to make a video call to her. Chapter 896. He was really busy. Shen Manting was not angry. She snorted coldly and was extremely unhappy. In such a busy situation, he actually went to have dinner with that woman. How important is that? Does Ming like that woman so much? Does he like her so much that he even ignores me, his fiancé? Such an obvious gap made it difficult for Shen Manting, who was born with a golden spoon in her mouth and grew up in the palm of her hand, to accept it. Shen Manting secretly calculated in her heart and called Ming's mother. It was now afternoon, and Ming's mother picked up the phone for a long time. It sounded like she was taking a nap. As soon as Shen Manting picked up the phone, she said sweetly, "Hello, Auntie. It's Manting. What's wrong?" Ming's mother had a cold recently, so when she spoke, her voice was a little nasal. Shen Manting could tell that there was something fishy going on. She exclaimed and asked, "Auntie, are you sick?" When Mother O heard this, she smiled and said, "You're such a careful child. I only said one sentence, and you already understood it." "Aya, as long as it's a person, they can find out. Have you taken your medication? Have you seen a doctor?" Shen Manting's caring questions warmed Ming's mother's heart. Ming's mother was quite emotional and said, "It's a small problem. It doesn't matter." "That won't do. I'll go to your house to see you. We recently got a new batch of ginseng, which is good for your health. I'll bring you one." "Manting, thank you, but forget it. Good ginseng is hard to come by." Hearing Ming's mother's words, Shen Manting looked at the time. It was 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She smiled and said, "As long as it's for Auntie, it's worth it. Please wait for me. I'll probably be home in the evening." She said home, not your home. Shen Manting's tone showed that she regarded the O family as her own home. Ming's mother clearly heard it and asked, "Where are you now?" At the same time, she also looked at the time. It was afternoon. "Come over and have afternoon tea with us." "Are you busy?" "I'm not busy. I'm just in Zhou City. It'll take about 3 to 4 hours to reach Kingstown. Please wait for me." Mother O was moved when she heard that. She said, "Forget it. You'd better get busy first. We'll get together when you're done. It will take 3 or 4 hours to get here." "No, Ming is so busy now, and he can't take good care of you as his son. As his daughter-in-law, I have to make up for this gap. Please wait. I'll make arrangements first." With that, Shen Manting hung up the phone. When Mother O heard the busy tone from the other side of the phone, her heart was indescribably moved, and she was even more satisfied with this future daughter-in-law. She then called Ming, but it wasn't Ming who picked up the phone. It was his assistant, Su Cheng. "Madam." Xueqi shouted and said, Master O is in a meeting. If that's the case, then give me a call after O Ming's meeting. I have something important to tell him. Xueqi had an ominous premonition in his heart, but he still respectfully agreed. O Ming's meeting lasted more than 2 hours. When it was over, it was already evening. Chapter 897. After the foreign guests left, Xueqi told O Ming about the phone call from O Ming's mother. After hesitating for a moment, Xueqi said, In the afternoon, Miss Shen called me. You were in a meeting at that time, so I asked her not to disturb you easily. I think Miss Shen went to talk to Madam about something. Xueqi didn't know much about Miss Shen, but just from the first few contacts, Shen Manting was very likely to do such a thing. For example, if she found out Yu Lily's existence, she would complain to O Ming's mother. Well, I see. Go back to your work. O Ming took the phone and immediately returned a call to O Ming's mother. O Ming's mother seemed to be busy. After a long time, she picked up the phone. Hello, O Ming. Yes. Mom. Manting came to Kingstown today. Go and pick her up. O Ming heard O Ming's mother's words and was silent for a moment. He said patiently, Mom, I'm very busy. I don't have time to do such boring things. Besides, isn't she in Kingstown? She came to my company yesterday. Why is she not here today? I heard that she's in Zhou City. It's a little far from Kingstown, Mother O said meaningfully. Although you're busy with work, Manting is your fiancé. You can't be too inconsiderate of her feelings. She heard that I'm sick, so she specially came from Zhou City to see me. Remember to be kind and polite. By the way, I heard that you've arranged a villa for her. That's the right thing to do. Treat her well. Manting is a good girl. I see. O Ming was a little impatient. I will send someone over. You don't have to worry so much. I'm busy. Bye. O Ming's mother was a little angry. After hanging up the phone, she sighed helplessly. She opened WeChat and sent a message to Shen Manting. I asked my son to pick you up. Shen Manting saw the message and was ecstatic. She replied, Really? That's great. O Ming's mother saw the message, smiled, and replied, Really? Shen Manting. Thank you, Auntie. Looking at the message on the mobile phone, Shen Manting was a little proud. She had taken care of O Ming's mother. It was said that this mistress was an orphan. Let's see how she would deal with her. It took Yu Lily 2 hours to finish a character. The man in the manga had a straight nose, a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes, and a beautiful mole under his left eye. His hairstyle was the most trendy design that accentuated his facial features. He was dressed in a burgundy suit, tall and slender. He squinted his eyes and looked forward. He held onto his loosened tie with one hand and squinted forward. His other hand was tucked into his trouser pocket. He was tall and slender. So handsome. Yu Lily's drawing style was different from that of ordinary comics. The characters' appearances and costumes were more delicate. She didn't deliberately outline their facial features. But after all, she was based on O Ming, so you could more or less see his shadow. With a satisfied smile, Yu Lily saved the character. The design of the male lead had been completed. All that was left was the design of the female lead. Yu Lily used the mobile phone to look at herself and smiled gently. Then, he started to draw on the digital tablet. Most of the female protagonists in comics were long-haired beauties. Chapter 898. After finishing the character design draft, Yu Lily thought about it, took a screenshot, and sent it to Sisai. Sisai quickly replied. Sisai. Did you draw this? Yuli. Yes, I just drew it. Sisai. Awesome. Didn't you say that you haven't learned it? It doesn't look like you haven't learned it. Yuli. I read a lot of comics yesterday. Sisai. This talent is amazing. I have to admire it. The male protagonist is so handsome, but he looks a little familiar. Yuli. I didn't plagiarize it. It's definitely an original design. Sisai. Don't tell me you're using something else as a model for your drawing again? Yuli. Yes, they are all my friends. I have asked them for advice. No way. However, O Ming wouldn't make trouble for her, and she wouldn't make trouble for herself either. Sisai. Okay, But do you want to create your own original work or do you need our script? If it is your own original work, there is no guarantee of a basic salary. It depends on the number of readers. Xueqi. How do you calculate the salary? Xueqi. Look at the PV. If the PV is high, your salary will not be low. You want to create an original work, right? Do you have an outline? Xueqi. No, Xueqi. You'd better write an outline of the script for me first. 1 episode a week. Can you do that? Xueqi. I think so. Xueqi. Come on, give me a pen name. Xueqi. Li Xiaoyu. After discussing the terms of the contract with Xueqi, Xueqi signed the contract. After getting the contract, Xueqi found that it was already dark. Xueqi was shocked and looked at the time. It was already 6:30 in the evening. Oh my God! Xueqi knocked on her head and quickly stood up. Just as she opened the door of the study, she saw Oh Ming coming back. Seeing Oh Ming, Xueqi smiled and said, I was too absorbed in my painting just now and didn't pay attention to the time. I forgot to cook. Hearing that, Oh Ming reached out to her and said, It's okay. Let's go out to eat. What do you want to eat? Then, as if remembering something, he asked, Have you brewed the medicine? Xueqi had forgotten all about it. Feeling guilty, she shook her head and said, No. How muddle-headed. You can forget everything, but how can you forget the medicine? As he spoke, he walked out and went to the living room. At a glance, he saw the medicine that he had just brought back on the coffee table. Oh Ming washed the pot and quickly put the medicine in. Xueqi was a little shocked and asked, You actually know how to brew medicine? Oh Ming glanced at Xueqi. With a hint of smugness, he said, Apart from giving birth, there seems to be nothing else I can't learn. Can you cook? You can learn. It meant that he wouldn't. Do you know how to clean? You can learn. That means you don't know anything. Xueqi looked at Oh Ming with some contempt and said, Humph, you only know how to brag. Oh Ming smiled and reached out to touch her head. He said, I can also brag about you. Do you want to try? When Xueqi heard that, she was about to refute when she saw the evil smile in Oh Ming's eyes. That pair of eyes was full of ridicule. Xueqi suddenly reacted, and her face suddenly burned. She stared at him, stomped her feet, and turned around shouting, Pervert! Chapter 899. Oh Ming walked toward her, and Xueqi ran away with a red face and said, I'm hungry. I'm hungry too. Oh Ming looked serious, but his eyes were full of emotions that made Xueqi feel ashamed and angry. Xueqi blushed even more. Oh Ming's hunger was not the same as hers. As Xueqi walked, Oh Ming found that the clothes she was wearing were different from usual. When did you buy these clothes? Oh Ming frowned and looked at her with some dissatisfaction. The clothes she wore in the capital should not have been brought here. Xueqi stuck out her tongue and said, I don't want to be judged. You see, I'm a girl. If I wear famous brands, won't they think I'm not simple? At that time, someone will definitely investigate me. If she was found to be living with Oh Ming, then things would not be so simple to solve. She had had enough of people pointing fingers at her. When others looked at her, there would always be a label in their eyes. A kept woman. Xueqi didn't like that feeling. She really didn't like it. Before Xueqi could finish her sentence, Oh Ming could clearly feel her displeasure. Seeing her obviously accusing expression, his face softened a little. He touched her head and said, Well, it's up to you. But when you're at home, don't wear these clothes. I don't like them. It was just like Xueqi when she saw the capital. She was so down and out that it was heartbreaking. Oh Ming also didn't like that feeling very much. Xueqi smiled, and her smile was like a flower. Seeing that smile, Oh Ming was also infected. With a chuckle, he took her hand and walked out. After the meal, the two returned home together. Oh Ming didn't try again this time. After showering with Xueqi, he went to work. Xueqi went out on her own to print the contract. After sending the contract home, Xueqi took a shower and then lay in bed to think about her new comic plot. She picked up a notebook and wrote it by hand. The next day was Wednesday. Xueqi's first day at work, so she dressed properly. When she arrived at the place, she found that during the interview yesterday, 2 people had been hired. Xueqi was one of them. The other one was a short girl. She wore black-rimmed glasses and wore ordinary clothes. She even looked a little rustic. Her name was Shan Yu. After informing her colleagues in the department, Yu Lily became an assistant to an editor named Yu. As for Shan Yu, she followed Sisai. Xueqi's real name was Yi Qianqian. She was a very beautiful girl with long, curly hair, a long coat, and a long skirt. One look and anyone could tell that she was a beauty. Yu Lily had already sent the contract out last night. She didn't want Sissy to know that she was Yu Xiaoyu. Sitting in her seat, Yu Lily found that this position was extremely idle. The main job was to review the artist's contract and the content of the comic. For the whole morning, Yu Lily was in a state of half busy, half idle, and half bored. But in the afternoon, the company became even quieter. Because they heard that a big shot was coming for an inspection. All of them sat upright and still, afraid that they would make that so-called big shot unhappy if they didn't behave appropriately. Chapter 900. She was very beautiful, with fashionable long curly hair hanging on her shoulders, and delicate makeup on her face. She wore a long pink coat with a white dress, looking cute and pure. She was expressionless and a little arrogant. It was the first time that Yu Lily had seen this woman. At a glance, she could see that this woman was a little cold and a little arrogant. The woman seemed to look over, and when she saw Yu Lily, her eyes seemed to be surprised. Yu Lily didn't know who this woman was. Meeting her eyes, Yu Lily was calm, smiled at her, and nodded. The woman outside was talking to the person next to her through the glass door, but her eyes were looking at Yu Lily. When the editor-in-chief next to her was talking to the woman, her eyes were also looking at Yu Lily. Yu Lily felt a little inexplicable and touched her face. But soon she turned her head and continued to work. However, what Yu Lily didn't know was that because of this look, her career had changed greatly. When she went to work the next day, Yu Lily was transferred to the company's front desk by the editor-in-chief. Yu Lily felt a little inexplicable. She was clearly working as an assistant editor. How did she suddenly become a front desk lady? Although she was puzzled, as a new employee, the most important thing she could do was to be obedient. On Thursday and Friday, Yu Lily honestly worked at the front desk and reviewed contracts as an editor. The third day was Saturday. Yu Lily had been working for several days in a row. The work intensity was not high, but she suddenly started to work, so she was still a little tired. She didn't get up until 10 o'clock. When she got up, Oh Ming had already disappeared. After washing up, Yu Lily went out and found that Oh Ming was making breakfast. Fresh and good-looking sandwiches were placed on the table, and hot milk was steaming in the cup. When Oh Ming saw her coming out, he put down the black coffee in his hand and waved to her. "Come here and have breakfast." Yu Lily was full of happiness. After washing her hands, she picked up the 3 words. "Super delicious. How do you know how to make this?" "I told you, there's nothing I can't learn other than giving birth." Oh Ming was beaming with joy, and there was an indescribable smile in his peach blossom eyes. He also picked up a sandwich and took a bite. "Drink a mouthful of milk. The medicine is almost ready. After breakfast, you can take the medicine in half an hour." This traditional Chinese medicine was used to adjust Yu Lily's cold sex. Yu Lily ate the sandwich and nodded. Halfway through breakfast, Oh Ming's cell phone rang. Yu Lily glanced at it and vaguely saw a name on the screen. Shen Manting. Yu Lily paused, but she quickly looked away and pretended not to see anything. Oh Ming didn't feel that anything was wrong. He calmly picked up the phone and ate his breakfast. However, to Oh Ming's surprise, the person on the other side was not Shen Manting, but his mother. "Lil. Oh, where are you? Today is the weekend. Come home. I haven't seen you in a long time. I miss you." When Oh Ming heard this, he paused in the act of eating and looked at the time before saying, "All right, then wait for me. I'll go home in a bit." Go home. When Yu Lily heard these 2 words, she looked up at him. What he said was, "Go home." Didn't Oh Ming dislike Shen Manting and that fiancé? But why would he have a family with her? Death. Chapter 901. What he said was to go home. Didn't Oh Ming dislike Shen Manting and his fiancé? But why would he have a family with her? And the word, "go home," came out of his mouth. It was so natural, which was not like a reaction to someone he hated. Yu Lily felt a little uncomfortable and watched him make the phone call. Oh Ming met Yu Lily's eyes and looked very calm. After hanging up the phone, Oh Ming ate the sandwich quickly and said, "Today is the weekend, I will go home." Then he stood up and was ready to go back to the room. Yu Lily watched him stand up, holding the sandwich in her hand slightly tightened, and shouted, "Oh Ming." "Yes." Oh Ming turned his head and looked at her. Yu Lily looked at his calm expression and felt a little strange in her heart. She asked, "Who was the person who just called?" "My mother, she asked me to go home." When Yu Lily heard this, her heart seemed to be hit by something, and she felt a little uncomfortable. Did he think that I didn't see it? The phone call just now was clearly from Shen Manting. Seeing that she was obviously unhappy, Oh Ming smiled and walked to her side. He kissed her on the cheek and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll be back in a moment. I won't be gone for long." Yu Lily looked at him for a long time, and then nodded. Oh Ming quickly went into the room to change clothes, took the car key and went out by himself. Yu Lily watched him go out, and her heart seemed to be blocked by a big stone. After finishing the rest of the breakfast, Yu Lily cleaned up, washed the dishes, took the medicine, and went into the study to draw. At the beginning, she couldn't get into the mood, and her mind was full of nonsense. After about 2 hours, Yu Lily felt something. She picked up the pen and began to draw. The day passed quickly, and Yu Lily didn't have lunch at noon. After all, she was a novice, and she didn't know how to outline many scenes, so she had to find some landscape pictures to copy while drawing. After a whole day, Yu Lily only drew one grid, and the efficiency was very low. Yu Lily's neck hurt after bowing her head all day. Twisting her neck, Yu Lily stood up and stretched. She ate some bread to fill her stomach and went to the supermarket to buy groceries. When Yu Lily put the rice cooker down, she gave Oh Ming a call. Oh Ming quickly picked up, but it sounded a little noisy on the other end. It sounded like an elderly woman talking. Yu Lily heard it clearly and asked, "Oh Ming, when are you coming back?" As he asked this question, the surroundings grew quieter and quieter. Obviously, Oh Ming was avoiding the crowd to make the call. Soon a pleasant and magnetic voice could be heard saying, "Later. Have you had lunch?" "When do you mean later?" Yu Lily avoided his question and said, "Remember to come back early." "All right. Have you taken the medicine?" "Remember to take your medicine, remember to eat, remember to drink more water." The series of reminders warmed Yu Lily's heart. "Well, you too. Remember to drink water and drive carefully." "Okay, I'm a little busy here. I'll hang up first." "All right." Yu Lily threw her phone on the sofa and was in a good mood. Chapter 902. Yu Lily's culinary skills were excellent, especially the braised pork. Oh Ming loved it every time. But it was a little troublesome, so Yu Lily didn't want to do it most of the time. That day, she saw that the streaky pork tasted good, so she bought some. It took Yu Lily more than 40 minutes to prepare that dish. She busied herself in the kitchen. When all the dishes were ready, it was almost 7 p.m. Yu Lily looked at the time and called Oh Ming. But this time, the phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. Finally, after a dozen rings, the phone automatically hung up. Yu Lily called again, but this time, it rang a few times before it was picked up. It was very quiet on the other end of the line. Only Oh Ming's voice could be heard. "Hello." Yu Lily heard Oh Ming's voice and was a little unhappy. She asked coquettishly, "Why aren't you back yet?" It was a little too quiet on the other end of the line. Even when he spoke, there was an echo. He said, "Later. I'm eating with my mother now. It's not easy for me to come back, so I have to stay a little longer before I leave." Hearing that, Yu Lily's mind subconsciously thought of the phone call in the morning. His return home. His mother. Why do they make me feel a little uncomfortable? Yu Lily wanted to ask, but she was afraid that he would think she was being too nosy. She hesitated for a moment and said, "All right. You go ahead." "Well, remember to eat." Oh Ming was a little apologetic. After reminding her, he hung up. Yu Lily looked at the table full of food, and her mood suddenly fell to the bottom. She scooped a bowl of rice for herself and slowly ate it. Just as Oh Ming hung up, Shen Manting opened the door and walked in. She was a little surprised to see him and said, "So you're here. What are you doing in the utility room?" "Nothing." Oh Ming put his phone in his pocket and didn't even want to look at her. He turned and walked out. Shen Manting pulled him from behind and said, "Oh Ming, I'm your future wife. Can't you treat me better?" Oh Ming stopped and turned to look at her with a faint smile. He said, "Shen Manting, you really dare to say that? If it weren't for my mother, do you think I would be engaged to you?" When Shen Manting heard that, she smiled and said, "You can't say that. You know your mother's condition. Without my brother's help, do you think your mother would have survived until now?" Oh Ming raised his eyebrows slightly and shook her hand off. He looked at her with contempt in his eyes and said, "Shen Manting, you're so good-looking. Why do you like a man like me? With your looks you can find any man you want. Why do you have a crush on me? I just like you. Don't think that I don't know that every time you go to the nightclub, you're just putting on a show for me. Do you think that I won't investigate?" Shen Manting walked over and raised her head proudly to look at Oh Ming. "Just like how I investigated your mistress, I know everything." Oh Ming looked at her with disgust in his eyes. Shen Manting was always like this. She was superior, arrogant, and complacent. Obviously, she didn't have much strength, but she relied on Shen Luo, and to be arrogant and domineering. She was simply a mentally retarded bigot. Chapter 903. Shen Manting was unhappy. She stamped her feet and snorted. Then she followed him out. Oh Ming sat down at the dining table. Shen Manting saw him sitting in front of Qiao Ziqing. She glanced at them and walked in that direction. She walked to Oh Ming's mother and said, "Auntie, let me help you with the rice. You should eat more." Qiao Ziqing looked at her daughter-in-law. The more she looked at her, the more she liked her. She nodded and said, "Okay." Shen Manting smiled proudly and looked at Oh Ming. Oh Ming acted as if he didn't see anything. He took the rice handed by the nanny and lowered his head to eat. Qiao Ziqing was a little dissatisfied and shouted, "Oh, don't just eat by yourself. Help Manting to eat." Oh Ming picked up some vegetables with his chopsticks and put them in Shen Manting's bowl. Then he continued to eat. His actions were fast and obviously perfunctory. But when Shen Manting saw his actions, she smiled proudly. Her smile was not big, and it was extremely difficult to notice. Qiao Ziqing looked at her son reproachfully and said, "Look at you. How can you treat a girl like this?" Fortunately, Manting is magnanimous. After dinner, I will send Manting back. Oh Ming was a little impatient, but when he saw the seriousness and expectation on his mother's face, he couldn't bear to refuse. He said, "Got it." Shen Manting smiled and lowered her head to eat. Sure enough, if she wanted to control Oh Ming, the best way was to control his mother first. Oh Ming's wife could only be Shen Manting. She didn't believe that with such a good condition, she couldn't be compared with a third son who had nothing. Hearing Oh Ming's response, Qiao Ziqing was finally satisfied and let him go. She picked up some food for Shen Manting and asked, "Are you used to living at Oh's place?" "Yes, it's very comfortable, and Oh Ming treats me very well," Shen Manting said with a smile. "I'm here to talk about the wedding date. We're not young anymore. I'm already 27 years old. My grandmother told my fortune. She said that I have to get married this year. Otherwise, I'll be in big trouble." Shen Manting nodded. Oh Ming sneered and said with some disdain, "What era is this? Do you still believe in this? For this kind of thing, I'd rather believe it to be true than not." Shen Manting looked at Oh Ming with a serious look on her face. "The fortune teller also said that our lives complement each other. Let's get married this year," Shen Manting said with a threatening look on her face. Oh Ming nodded. Oh Ming's eyes were deep as he ate. The reason why Shen Manting could say such a thing was that she believed that he had to rely on Shen Luo and's medicine to keep his mother alive. But what Shen Manting didn't know was that Oh Ming had already started researching the cause of his mother's illness 2 years ago. He had also been working on Shen Luo and's secret prescription. Once he succeeded, he would no longer need to maintain this nominal fiancé relationship with Shen Manting. At that time, he could openly break off the engagement and marry the person he truly loved. However, before that, he could not afford to gamble. Hearing Shen Manting's suggestion, Oh Ming looked up and said expressionlessly, "It's already November, and the year is almost over. There's only a little more than a month left. Isn't it too late to say it now?" Chapter 904. In fact, Shen Manting had already told Qiao Ziqing about this. Sure. Hearing this, Qiao Ziqing smiled and nodded. There are still 3 to 4 months until the new year. It's still not too late to start preparing for the wedding. Will I be able to hold a grandchild next year? Shen Manting lowered her head and looked at Ming shyly. Qiao Ziqing smiled even more happily and teased. This girl is actually shy. What's there to be shy about? It's settled then. I'll ask someone to check the date tomorrow. What's the hurry? Ming put down the bowl. I've just been planning an overseas investment project. I'm very busy recently. I'm afraid I don't have that much time to do this. It doesn't matter. Shen Manting smiled brightly. I know you're busy. Just leave it to me. It just so happens that my brother has nothing to do. I've already asked him to come over and help. Your brother? Yes, you've also met him, Shen Jilie. Shen Jilie was Shen Luo, An's younger brother. He was also a doctor, but he majored in psychology. Ming responded and put down his chopsticks. Looking at his mother and Shen Manting's happy faces in front of him, he couldn't express his annoyance. I don't plan to get married so early, Manting. My career is still on the rise. As you can see, wait for me for a while. Ming, I can't wait anymore. Do you want me to die next year? I've waited for you for 4 years, and you still want me to wait? You're so selfish. Shen Manting pouted and looked like she was about to cry. Seeing this, Qiao Ziqing was also a little angry at Ming's attitude. She said, the best time of a girl has been wasted by you. How can you be like this? You're going to make me die of anger. Look at yourself. You're already 31 years old. Li Xiqing's twins are running around everywhere. The last time I came over, you called me grandma. How can you say that your career is on the rise? You're so useless. Mom. Ming felt a little headache. Qiao Ziqing directly interrupted Ming's words. Anyway, don't worry about it. Go and do your own things. Leave the wedding to me and Manting. We must get married within this year. Shen Manting held Qiao Ziqing's arm and said emotionally, Auntie? Qiao Ziqing patted Shen Manting's arm and said, Manting, don't worry. I'm indebted to the Shen family. I won't let you down no matter what. Shen Manting was delighted to hear this. She sniffed and nodded in satisfaction. Ming didn't say anything. He stood up, picked up the pack of cigarettes, and walked out. At that moment, Ming's father, Huijin, walked in. He looked travel-worn. Qiao Ziqing was pleasantly surprised to see Huijin. You're back. Doesn't it mean that he'll come back tomorrow? Huijin was handsome. Although he was already in his 50s, he still looked like a man in his 30s or 40s. Huijin's expression softened when he heard Qiao Ziqing's words. He walked over and said, I heard that Manting is here, so I ended it early. What are you talking about? Why are you so happy? Let's talk about our marriage, Shen Manting said with a bright smile. When Huijin heard that, he looked at Ming in surprise and said, Son, you've finally come to your senses. You know that you can't drag on at your age? Chapter 905. Are you full? You only ate a little? Qiao Ziqing said from behind, but Ming didn't pay any more attention to her. He walked straight outside. It wasn't just Shen Manting. Even Mr. and Mrs. O could see Ming's displeasure. Shen Manting felt a little awkward. She looked at Qiao Ziqing and asked, Auntie, is it good for us to force him like this? Qiao Ziqing looked disapproving and said, It's not right for you to think that way. Back then, when Lao married me, he was also very unwilling. Later on, he still doted on me like a treasure. Let me tell you, men have to be forced. If you don't force him, he won't be able to do anything. Shen Manting suddenly felt relieved. She nodded and smiled brightly. That's what my grandmother told me. No matter how playful a man is, he'll learn after marriage. What's more, Ming is such a responsible man. Hearing Shen Manting praise her son, Qiao Ziqing was equally happy. Soon, the two of them began to discuss the matter of marriage. Ming was a little annoyed as he walked outside. After lighting a cigarette, he dialed the number to the Pharmaceutical Research Institute that he had privately built. He asked about the progress, and they said a lot, but in the end, there was still no result. Ming was already in a bad mood, but it suddenly became even worse. He regretted it. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have brought Yu Lily back from the capital at this critical juncture. Now that the matter had not been resolved, and Yu Lily was so sensitive, if she sensed that something was wrong, she would definitely overthink it. What should I do? Ming took a deep drag on his cigarette. He felt a splitting headache. He took his car keys and walked toward his car. Before he could put the keys in, he heard Huijin call out, "Xiao." When Ming heard that, he turned his head. Huijin stood at the door and looked at him meaningfully. A pair of slightly wrinkled peach blossom eyes looked in his direction and said, "Let's talk." Ming didn't go home, so Yu Lily was in a very bad mood. After dinner, Yu Lily was no longer in the mood to paint. She lay on the bed, her mind full of random thoughts. Holding her phone, she wanted to call Ming, but she didn't dare do it. What if he found her annoying? What should she do? With her current status, what right did she have to ask him where he went and who he was with? Yu Lily was very clear, but at the same time, she felt a strong sense of loss. The gap between them was still too big. Yu Lily was extremely upset. After rolling on the bed for a while, she went to take a shower and then went to the study, turning on the computer to draw. When it was about 11 o'clock, Ming still hadn't come back. Yu Lily's heart felt empty. She picked up the phone and dialed Ming. The call was quickly answered, and Ming's voice came through. "You're not asleep yet?" His gentle question made Yu Lily feel relieved. She pouted and said, "I can't sleep if you don't come back. Where are you?" Ming was silent for a moment. After a long time he said, "I'm not going back tonight." Chapter 906. "Oh," Yu Lily asked. "At your mother's place?" "Yes." "Remember to sleep early and remember to take your medicine," Ming replied calmly. Yu Lily's chest tightened, and she felt indescribably depressed. However, she couldn't say anything. After a moment of silence she said, "Got it. Go to work. Good night." "Good night." After hanging up the phone, the air was dead silent. Her mood seemed to be hollowed out by his words, and it was terrible. Yu Lily looked at the ceiling for a long time, then threw the phone away, covered the top of her head with the quilt, and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep all night. There was still a lot of food left from last night's dinner. Yu Lily didn't have extra money, so she put it away. She heated it in the microwave and ate some. Her eyes were a little painful, but she couldn't fall asleep. Yu Lily put on a loose sportswear and went out for a run. The apartment where Ming lived was located in the prosperous area of the city, and it was also a very famous area for the rich. There were many parks and squares. Yu Lily trotted all the way, and after 2 laps, it was already dawn. When she returned to the apartment, it was already after 9 o'clock. She pressed the elevator button, and she was a little out of breath. Suddenly there was the sound of a suitcase being pulled, but Yu Lily didn't care. However, there was a sudden exclamation behind her, and it seemed to be a little surprise. It was a man's voice shouting, "It's you?" Yu Lily didn't know whether it was an illusion or something, but she felt a little familiar. Turning her head, she saw a young man who looked about 25 or 26 years old standing not far behind her. He was wearing a pink suit, pulling a suitcase, and looked very well equipped. He had a fashionable hairstyle and a carefully groomed face. At first glance, she knew he was a very particular person. However, the man's smile was bright, and he was full of sunshine and cheerful appearance. At this moment he was looking at Yu Lily with surprise, pointing at her and said slowly, "It's really you. Damn, I was cheated by you last time. You little liar." Yu Lily looked at the man, and the familiar feeling came. It seems, I saw him when I was a bartender? Could it be that he had been deceived by her? Yu Lily immediately turned her face away and pretended to be calm as she said, "You must have mistaken me for someone else. I don't know you." "How is that possible? We must have met before." "You are that. Who was that? What's your name?" "Li Xiaoyu?" "Right, it must be you." Shen Jilia looked at her with certainty and said, "I'm very sure, but Li Xiaoyu is definitely your pseudonym. What's your real name?" Yu Lily was a little annoyed. She turned her head and scolded, "Are you crazy? I don't know you." TSK, I still have that 1982 Lafite. Shen Jilia's interest was piqued and he said, I don't have any intention of getting even with you. I just want to be friends and get to know you better. My name is Shen Jilia, and I'm 26 years old. I just moved here today. Do you live here? Yu Lily didn't want to leave him behind. When the elevator arrived, she immediately walked in. Shen Jilia followed her in and pressed the elevator button. It was the 20th floor. Chapter 907. Yu Lily was a little impatient. She looked at him with annoyance and said, Why are you so talkative? Shen Jilia immediately shut up. Yu Lily glared at him and pressed the elevator button for the 26th floor. Shen Jilia didn't say another word. He secretly memorized the floor number. When the elevator stopped on the 20th floor, Shen Jilia pulled his suitcase and walked out. His smile was as bright as the sun. He looked like a handsome, sunny young man who had just walked out of a comic. I'll move first. I'll come to play with you later. Yu Lily didn't want to pay attention to him at all. After pressing the button to close the elevator door, she pressed the button for the 26th floor to cancel. Then, she pressed the button for the 28th floor and went up. As soon as she went up, Yu Lily felt very sleepy. She changed her clothes, hugged the quilt, and fell asleep. He slept until the middle of the night. When she woke up, Oh Ming was already sleeping beside her. He was only wearing a bathrobe. His breathing was even, and his arm was on her waist. It was a familiar and natural action, but at this moment, Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat, and she almost couldn't hold back her tears. Leaning into his arms, Yu Lily greedily and carefully breathed, smelling his scent and closed her eyes. The next day, Monday, Yu Lily was directly sent to the front desk and became a temporary receptionist. However, she stayed there for 3 days. On the 4th day, Yu Lily finally couldn't help it. She went to the chief editor's office and knocked on the door. Come in. After Yu Lily went in, the chief editor just glanced at her, then lowered her head and said, What's the matter? Chief editor Zhou, when I came here, I was interviewed for the position of an editorial assistant, not a receptionist. Why did you ask me to go to the front desk? Chief editor Zhou pushed her glasses and said matter-of-factly, You are a newcomer, so you should help each other. The front desk is temporarily short of staff, so I just asked you to fill in for a few days. A new receptionist will come tomorrow, and you can go back to the office to work tomorrow. This explanation was a bit far-fetched. Shan Yu was still a newcomer. Why did Yu Lily work at the front desk instead of Shan Yu? Yu Lily was not very convinced, but when she heard this, she had nothing to say. The next day, when Yu Lily went to work again, she went straight to the office to wait for her shift instead of going to the front desk. Ziyu saw her and said, Aren't you supposed to be working at the front desk? Why are you still here? The chief editor said that I can come back to work here. There will be a new receptionist coming today. Ziyu nodded. If that's the case, go through this stack. All right. Yu Lily started working diligently. After about an hour, the chief editor walked into the office. She was a little angry and shouted, Where is Yu Lily? Where is Yu Lily? She looked up and raised her hand. I'm here. Don't you know that there's no one at the front desk? The delivery man is throwing a tantrum over there. Go and collect the package. Yu Lily felt puzzled and said, Chief editor Zhou, what does the delivery man's anger have to do with me? I'm not the receptionist, am I? When editor-in-chief Zhou heard this, she was a little angry and said, Didn't I tell you to be the receptionist first? You are so disobedient. How can I use you? Chapter 908. Yu Lily heard the implication and was a little annoyed. Was there anything wrong with what she said? Or was the editor-in-chief just not happy with me and wanted to fire me? But even if she was angry, Yu Lily's job was not easy. Yu Lily could still bear such a degree of targeting. She explained patiently, Editor-in-chief, I heard you say yesterday that I could go back to the office to work today, so I came back directly. If you had told me that I couldn't come back and had to work at the front desk, I wouldn't have come back to the office. Editor-in-chief Zhou was a little angry and sneered. Do you mean to blame me? Is it my fault? No, I just said that. Aren't you blaming me? Well, I didn't make it clear. This time it's my fault. Go to the front desk. After that, Editor-in-Chief Zhou turned and left. Yu Lili was a little embarrassed, and many colleagues looked over. Especially Shan Yu, when she looked over, there was sympathy in her eyes. Yu Lili endured the grievance in her heart and returned to the front desk. After collecting all the packages, she sat at the front desk and reviewed the contracts. She didn't know how long she had been alone. After a while, Yi Qianqian handed a cup of coffee to Yu Lili and said, "Take a break and have a cup of coffee." Yu Lili looked at Yi Qianqian gratefully and thanked her sincerely. "Thank you." Yi Qianqian smiled. After looking around, she went to the front desk and sat with Yu Lili. She whispered, "There was a front desk here and you should have seen it once. It was the first day you came to work." She was still working, but suddenly the editor-in-chief asked her to go home. The next day, she asked you to be the front desk and assistant. Did you have a grudge with editor-in-chief Zhou before? Yu Lili had expected that editor-in-chief Zhou was deliberately targeting her, but she still felt a little wronged when she heard it from her colleagues. After thinking about it carefully, Yu Lili felt that there should be no reason for her to offend the editor-in-chief. Shaking her head, Yu Lili looked at Yi Qianqian and asked, "How long have you been working here?" "Me. It's been more than 3 months." Yi Qianqian took a sip of coffee and smiled. She said, "Eurasian Comics is a new website. It's only been open for less than 3 months, but from the looks of it, it has a promising future ahead of it. But if you work at the front desk, you won't have much of a future. You have to strive to become an assistant editor as soon as possible so that you can slowly learn things." How could Yu Lili not understand this? But at the moment, editor-in-chief Zhou was their boss. Above editor-in-chief Zhou, there was a chief editor. However, the chief editor did not come here often. It was said that he would only come here once or twice. If Yu Lili hadn't guessed wrong, the person who had spoken to editor-in-chief Zhou last time and made editor-in-chief Zhou act like a lackey should be the editor-in-chief of Eurasian Comics. Thinking of that woman, Yu Lili immediately remembered the last time she and editor-in-chief Zhou looked at her and talked. Is it because of that woman that editor-in-chief Zhou is targeting me? But when did she offend her? Yu Lili frowned and thought for a long time, but she couldn't figure out the reason. Speak of the devil. Yu Lili inadvertently looked up and saw the woman at a glance. It was the woman who had a pleasant conversation with editor-in-chief Zhou a few days ago. She was suspected to be the chief editor. Death. Chapter 909. Shen Manting walked over with a beautiful handbag. She was twirling a furry ball in her hand. It was a beautiful furry ball of bright red color. Yu Lili recognized it at a glance. This fur ball seemed to be the latest decoration of a luxury brand. It was made from the most beautiful part of the tail of the red fox. It was particularly precious. She had seen it in a magazine and liked it very much. Unfortunately, although Yu Lili liked it, she couldn't afford it. Seeing her coming over, Yi Qianqian felt a little familiar, so she nodded with a smile. However, Shen Manting didn't even look at Yi Qianqian. She looked straight at Yu Lili and asked, "Is your chief editor Zhou here?" "Yes, in the office." "Let me call her for you?" While Yu Lili was talking, she had already picked up the phone and called Chief Editor Zhou. Shen Manting looked at her with a big smile and said, "Thank you. This is for you." She casually threw the furball into Yu Lili's arms. Yu Lili was stunned and looked at Shen Manting. Shen Manting winked at her and said, "I bought it casually, but it doesn't look good on me. I think you look beautiful in red, so I gave it to you." Yu Lili couldn't believe it. When she was about to say something, Shen Manting turned around and was about to go inside. "Wait." Yu Lili stopped her and said, "This thing is very expensive. Oh, I don't like it. If you don't like it, you can give it to someone else. But I really think it suits you. You can hang it on your bag. It must be very beautiful." Shen Manting waved at her and walked inside. Yu Lili felt like she had seen a ghost. Is this for real? The editor-in-chief actually gave such a valuable thing to him just like that? She was too generous. Yu Lili felt a little surprised. Looking at Shen Manting's back, she shouted, "Thank you." Shen Manting's back was facing her, and a triumphant smile flashed across her face. She waved her hand and walked into the room. Yi Qianqian looked at the furball in Yu Lili's hand and felt a little envious. She said, "That's nice. This thing seems very expensive." Yu Lili really liked it. She held it in her hand and couldn't wait to hang it on her bag. The handbag was also a very beautiful bright red, and it complemented the furball very well. So beautiful! Yi Qianqian liked it very much, but she still sighed and said, "That's great. I'm going to work now. You can continue reviewing the contract." Yu Lily smiled and nodded. She raised her hand and said, "Thank you for the coffee." "You're welcome." After Yi Qianqian left, Yu Lily secretly felt that she might have been too narrow-minded. This furball was even more expensive than her salary, yet the chief editor had given it to her so casually. He probably wasn't targeting her on purpose, right? Yu Lily looked at the furball and was in a good mood. After work, Yu Lily returned home and was surprised to find that Oh Ming was already home. Yu Lily was carrying the groceries she had just bought and said, "Why are you back so early today? I haven't cooked yet." Oh Ming sat in the living room, glanced at the groceries in her hand, and said, "Put them in the fridge. I ordered takeout." As he spoke, he stood up and walked toward Yu Lily. Oh Ming's long fingers were holding a cigarette, which was slowly emitting smoke. Yu Lily looked at him and didn't care. She sorted the groceries and put them in the fridge. Before she finished, Oh Ming had already hugged her waist. Oh Ming gently exhaled the smoke in her ear. With a faint evil smile on his lips he said, "Yu Lily, how long have you lived here?" His voice was low. As he spoke, Oh Ming held her waist with both hands and rubbed his head forward. He gently rubbed his cheek against her face, and the corners of his lips seemed to touch her from time to time. If it had been the usual Yu Lily, she would definitely have raised her head to meet his touch. But at that moment, Yu Lily felt a little uncomfortable. Yu Lily looked sideways, kissed him gently on the lips and said, "About 10 days?" Oh Ming closed the refrigerator door and gently pressed her against the refrigerator door. With a slightly upturned voice he said, "It's 11 days. In a few days, it will be half a month." Yu Lily had recently gained some weight. Compared with the bones when she first came back, she now had a lot of meat on her body. Even her hair had grown a little longer. Compared with a few days ago, she looked twice as good. Today in the office, she suddenly remembered the feeling of the past. Oh Ming simply got off work early and returned home. After waiting for a long time, Yu Lily returned home. Oh Ming touched her belly with his big hand, gently squeezed it, and said, "Is your illness better?" In order to respect her, Oh Ming had not expressed any intention of asking for anything during this time. But today, he couldn't help it. Oh Ming gently pressed her against the refrigerator door and leaned over to kiss her gently. Seeing this, Yu Lily suddenly understood. Her heart tightened, and she felt a little nervous and guilty. Facing his fiery gaze, Yu Lily put her hands around his neck and said, "Not yet." Yu Lily was about to speak, but Oh Ming had already pressed her down and kissed her fiercely. Yu Lily exclaimed, and her slender waist was almost broken. She shouted, "Be gentle." Oh Ming heard that and loosened his grip, but his action was still not gentle. Yu Lily let him do whatever he wanted, but her body didn't feel anything. She was even a little annoyed and disgusted. An idea quickly began to expand in her mind. All he wanted was her body. When this idea popped out, Yu Lily's originally reluctant heart felt more and more impatient. She gently pushed him away, but Oh Ming didn't let her move. He looked at her with a pair of deep peach blossom eyes. They looked at each other and didn't say a word. Chapter 9-10. Oh Ming stopped what he was doing and pulled himself away. Yu Lily touched his pocket and saw that he took out a bottle of something. Watching him use it, Yu Lily gritted her teeth and closed her eyes. Oh Ming continued. This time, Yu Lily didn't cry out in pain. She was carried to the sofa and they lay together. But no matter what he did, she didn't feel the slightest bit. The only feeling was discomfort. Yu Lily lay on the sofa and didn't feel anything at all. She was like a dead fish. Oh Ming almost thought that he was F***king. Oh Ming got up in annoyance, took a cigarette box on the side, lit it, and took a long drag. Yu Lily was tired. After Oh Ming finished, she lay on the sofa and looked at him. She was a little tired and said, "I'm hungry." Oh Ming blew out a smoke ring. Looking at her innocent expression, he felt even more annoyed in his heart. This woman always had such an expression on her face. Even when he was at his most excited, she would still call him perfunctorily. How could a man tolerate this? Oh Ming narrowed his eyes and said, "Someone will deliver the food at 8 o'clock." As he spoke, he had already put on his clothes. Oh Ming picked up the car key and stood up. Yu Lily grabbed him and panicked. "What are you going to do?" "Let's go for a walk." Oh Ming moved her hand away and walked out. Yu Lily was a little disappointed. She watched him open the door and walk out. She sat on the sofa and felt a little lost. Shan Manting listened to the commotion on the other side and heard all the strange noises. She could guess what was going on. There was only so little between a man and a woman. Without sex, how could there be love? Now, even their sex life was not harmonious. Oh Ming was at such a young and vigorous age, and his physical condition was so outstanding. Who would be able to endure it? Since Oh Ming was out now, it was time for her to do it. Shan Manting picked up the phone and dialed Oh Ming's number. But soon, she immediately thought of something and pressed the number. After thinking about it, she called Xiao Ziqing. The phone was quickly connected. "Hello, Auntie?" Shan Manting's voice was sweet and easy to please. Xiao Ziqing had just finished her dinner and was in a good mood when she heard Shan Manting's voice. She asked, "What's the matter? Why are you so happy?" "Really?" Shan Manting looked in the mirror and smiled. She suddenly felt that the person in the mirror was beautiful. "It's so easy to see. Hee. Actually I prepared a surprise for Oh Ming, but you know how he treats me. I'm afraid that he won't come. Can you ask him to come over? The little girl is quite smart. Where do you want him to go?" Shan Manting was a little proud and said, "You can say that you are now in the Shishan villa and wait for him to pick you up." Okay, I'll listen to you. I'll call him." Shan Manting's heart was filled with joy. She quickly put the phone aside and entered the cloakroom. Just as he was about to find a bar to relax, he received a call from his mother. When he heard that she was in the West Mountain Villa, he suddenly felt a headache. Oh Ming drove to the Shishan Villa area and rang the doorbell. Chapter 9:11. Shan Manting was obviously very happy to see him. She pulled him in and then closed the door. Oh Ming looked inside and frowned. He looked around and asked, "Where is my mother?" Shan Manting stood behind Oh Ming and did not speak. Oh Ming turned around impatiently, but when he turned around, he was stunned. Shan Manting had taken off her bathrobe. When Oh Ming turned around, he saw Shan Manting's sexy figure at a glance. Her sexy black lace underwear accentuated her fair skin, making it look even more tender and beautiful. Oh Ming's eyes fell on her body immediately. Her beautiful body proportion, well-maintained skin, and figure were all the best. Shan Manting leaped up and pounced on Oh Ming. Oh Ming was shocked and subconsciously wanted to avoid her. Shan Manting had expected it. She turned around and hugged him tightly. Shan Manting was a little shorter than Yu Lily, but she was much sexier than Yu Lily. She was petite and exquisite. From Oh Ming's point of view, he could clearly see Shan Manting's deep white cleavage. Seduction. Oh Ming was a man, and a normal man in the prime of his life. He didn't enjoy himself at home. Now seeing such a picture, Oh Ming only felt his throat tighten. Shan Manting sensed his reaction and kissed him on the lips. Oh Ming swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Seeing her obvious seduction, he suddenly felt that he couldn't control himself. However, at the same time, his mind seemed to think of Yu Lily's beautiful face. Oh Ming turned his head and reached out to push her away. With a straight face, Oh Ming looked at Shan Manting in front of him and was a little annoyed. "What are you doing?" Shan Manting had delicate makeup on her face. She pouted and said, "We are engaged. Isn't it normal to meet each other's physical needs?" As she spoke, she walked toward Oh Ming and said, "Sooner or later, we will be husband and wife. Oh Ming, don't leave tonight." When Oh Ming heard that, his eyes flashed with disgust and he said angrily, "Are you so short of men? Tiske, your words are too hurtful. Oh Ming, you are my fiancé. Isn't your first duty to satisfy me?" Shan Manting walked up to him and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "It's better than staying with a mistress who can't satisfy you, right?" When Oh Ming heard that, his beautiful peach blossom eyes shone with a sharp light. Shan Manting was startled by the look in his eyes and stopped in her tracks. "What do you know?" Oh Ming looked at her and took a step forward. Are you spying on me? Oh Ming's aura was more powerful than Shen Manting had imagined. When he took a step forward, Shen Manting subconsciously took a step back. But then he realized that he should have gone up to meet them. She smiled coquettishly and stepped forward, saying, "If I had that ability, would I still be afraid that I wouldn't be able to take you down?" As she spoke, she untied the strap of her underwear and winked at him. "I know you also want to," she said coquettishly. Oh Ming's face darkened. He pushed her away without any pity and said angrily, "Get lost." Chapter 9:12. Oh Ming's face was cold. He turned and walked out. Shen Manting looked at Oh Ming's back and shouted, "What's so good about that, mistress? Oh Ming, you be **starred. Oh Ming opened the door wide and walked out without the slightest intention of closing the door. The cold wind blew in, and Shen Manting shivered from the cold. Seeing Oh Ming's lack of pity, Shen Manting was so angry that she hit the sofa and shouted, "Be **starred. After what Shen Manting had done, Oh Ming felt even more suffocated. He found a random bar and downed a lot of alcohol. Oh Ming was drunk, but he could only lie on the bar, feeling dizzy. Losing his balance, Oh Ming fell straight down. Bang! The stool was overturned by Oh Ming, and the noise was loud. The waiter had a headache and helped him up. He said, "Sir, you should call someone to pick you up. How can you drink so much?" Oh Ming was dizzy from the fall, and his mind was a mess. The waiter knew that he was too drunk, so he said, "Where's your phone? Take it out and see who is the best person to call." When Oh Ming heard that, he took the phone out of his pocket and pressed the 1 key. The waiter was a little speechless because the number that Oh Ming dialed turned out to be the word that cursed people the most. Bitch. Lily was drawing. There were only a few strokes left on the last frame. Seeing that she was finally about to finish the first episode, she felt indescribably satisfied. The phone rang. It was Oh Ming. "Hello. Lily." Oh Ming sounded drunk as he shouted, "I'm drinking." "You?" Lily frowned and asked, "Where are you?" "Where am I?" "I don't know." Oh Ming sounded very drunk. Oh Ming's alcohol tolerance was very good. To be able to drink to this extent, how much could he drink? The waiter quickly took the phone and gave Lily the address. Lily put down her paintbrush without saying a word, put on some clothes, and took a taxi to the bar the waiter had mentioned. Oh Ming was helped to sit at the bar counter. In front of him was a large pile of wine bottles and glasses. Lily had a headache. She quickly took her hand from the waiter and said, "Thank you. Let me do it." When Oh Ming heard Lily's voice, he turned his head and smiled happily. "You're here." As he spoke, he hugged her with both hands and said, "Let's go home." The smell of alcohol filled the air. Lily frowned in disgust, pushed him away, and said, "How much did you drink? The smell is so strong." When the waiter saw Lily, he was a little surprised, but he still took out the bill and said, "This gentleman drank a lot of wine, and you haven't paid yet." Lily looked at the list and felt a headache. Oh Ming held her in his arms and rested his head on her neck, panting slightly. He must have drunk too much and was feeling unwell, right? Lily patted his face in disgust, took out the leather armor from his pocket, took out a card, and handed it to the waiter. The waiter took the POS machine and entered the password for Lily. Lily skillfully entered the password, but it was wrong. Lily was stunned. When she saw the waiter's surprised look, she felt a little embarrassed. Chapter 9:13. Did he change the password? Lily glanced at the card, frowned, and changed another one. There were many cards in Oh Ming's leather armor, but after trying 3 or 4 of them, the passwords were all wrong. Lily's face was so hot that she could cook an egg. She patted Oh Ming's face and asked, "Hey, what is the password of your card?" Oh Ming was already asleep, and he didn't feel anything after being patted. Lily just went out in a hurry, so she only brought enough money to take a taxi, and she didn't prepare a card at all. Now this situation is so embarrassing. Under everyone's gaze, Lily searched Oh Ming's wallet again, and then took out 3 or 4 cards. After swiping them again, all of them were wrong. Feeling more and more strange eyes around, Lily finally found a card, a red goddess card. It used to be used by her, and at the same time, it was also opened in her name. When Yu Lily saw this card, she couldn't tell how much she missed it. However, this card was the salary card that she enjoyed when she was still a nominal supervisor in a European-style shopping mall. At that time, she managed 3 or 4 stores, each of which was a big brand with very good business, so the dividends were naturally not to be underestimated. After Yu Lily returned all the money to O Ming, she left the card in the villa. O Ming had already cancelled her dividends, and now, there should be no money in it. However, it was the last card in O Ming's wallet. Sighing in her heart, Yu Lily handed the card to the waiter. At this point, she could only make a desperate attempt. The password of this card was O Ming's birthday. O Ming said it himself, and Yu Lily didn't change it back later. Yu Lily entered the password, and she had already prepared the excuse to put it on credit, but to her surprise, it showed that the payment was successful. The waiter finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I will help you take him back. He drove here." "Okay, thank you." The waiter helped O Ming back to the car, and Yu Lily took the car key from O Ming's pocket and drove back to the apartment. O Ming was lying in the back seat all the way, and he howled from time to time. Yu Lily parked the car in the garage. When she looked at the back seat, O Ming had already fallen into the gap of the car seat. Yu Lily was exasperated. She reached out and pulled O Ming up. "That's too much. Why did you drink so much?" He tried to pull, but to no avail. O Ming seemed to know what she was doing and got up. After Yu Lily finally managed to drag him out, the further he walked, the more inclined he became. It was very difficult for Yu Lily to carry it. She pulled hard and shouted, "Stand straight." It was past midnight, and there weren't many people in the garage. Yu Lily's roar echoed in the garage. At the same time, a beautiful orange-red Maserati drove in and parked in the underground garage. Yu Lily was overjoyed and turned to look. The car soon came to a stop, and a man in a pink suit stepped out. When Shen Jilia saw Yu Lily, he was shocked and overjoyed. When Yu Lily saw him, she felt that it was inevitable. She wanted to run, but O Ming was too heavy. Yu Lily's hands were sore, but she still couldn't move him. Chapter 9:14. Brother-in-law? Yu Lily couldn't believe it and looked at him. Brother-in-law? This man is called Shen Jilia, and O Ming's fiancé is called Shen Manting. It can't be so coincidental, can it? Is he Shen Manting's younger brother? Shen Jilia came forward and pulled O Ming up with one hand. He straightened O Ming's face and said, It's really my future brother-in-law." But then he looked at Yu Lily with some disbelief and said, "Are you the mistress my sister talked about? My God, the world is so small." Yu Lily's heart sank. She glared at him and then slapped his hand away and shouted, "Get out of my way." Shen Jilia also realized that his words might have been a little inappropriate, so he laughed dryly and ran over to Yu Lily. He reached out his hand to take O Ming from her. Yu Lily roared, "Get out of my way, don't touch my man. He is not your brother-in-law." Shen Jilia was shocked by her anger and waved his hand helplessly. Well, but you can't carry him alone. Let me help you carry him up, okay?" Yu Lily's eyes were red, and she stared at him. She put her hands under O Ming's armpits and half dragged and half pulled him to the elevator. Shen Jilia knew that he said something wrong, so he shut his mouth. But when he saw her struggling, he couldn't stand it anymore. He went forward and pulled O Ming, who was in her arms, over and said, "Oh, let me help you. Let's go." Shen Jilia pulled O Ming. Obviously, he was much stronger than Yu Lily. He pulled O Ming up without any effort. Yu Lily looked at him, and her heart was empty. This man turned out to be O Ming's future brother-in-law. Shen Jilia carried O Ming to the elevator. When he turned his head, he found that Yu Lily was still standing in the same place. He shouted, "Hey, follow me. Which floor is it?" Yu Lily walked up quickly, and the elevator arrived. When the elevator door opened, Yu Lily stepped in and pressed the button for the 28th floor. He said, "You are so cunning. I went to the 26th floor to look for you many times, but the 4 owners of the 26th floor said they didn't know you. It turns out that you live on the 28th floor. My brother-in-law is the only one living on the 28th floor. You really live with my brother-in-law." Moreover, it was said that this was O Ming's private residence. Even O Ming's parents had never been here before. How could this woman live here so openly? Shenjilia looked at her and shook his head. Yulili didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt sympathy and regret on Shenjilia's face. Yulili glared at him. Before Yulili could speak, Oming spoke first. You. Oming's voice carried a strong sense of intoxication. He opened his eyes, which were bloodshot. He raised his hand and reached out to Yulili. Yulili went forward and hugged him. Her heart was slightly sour. She whispered, "Well, I'm here. I'm home." As Yulili got closer, the distance between her and Shenjilia was also shortened. Shenjilia could clearly smell the fresh fragrance of Yulili in addition to the smell of alcohol on Oming's body. It smelled good, and it was very comfortable, just like her. Shenjilia sniffed and felt his heart was moved. He said, "Your name is Yulili, right? I've heard of you." Chapter 9:15. Yulili heard that and ignored him. Ding. When the elevator arrived, Yulili held Oming and said, "I'll go in by myself." "Thank you, Mr. Shen." Shenjilia was not stupid. He could clearly hear the deliberate alienation in Yulili's words. But he still pretended not to understand and said, "You're welcome. We are neighbors. I'll help you to help him in." As soon as she finished speaking, she pulled Oming to the door without giving him a chance to speak. Yulili looked at him and quickly pressed the password. She looked up and found that Shenjilia had consciously turned his head away. She breathed a sigh of relief and watched Shenjilia help Oming into the house. Oming opened his eyes in a daze. When he saw that it was his home, he pushed Shenjilia away and walked inside. At the same time he shouted drunkenly, "Yulili! I'm here!" Yulili answered and hurried forward. But when Oming saw her, he laughed drunkenly, pulled her over and said, "You're back. I missed you so much." Such straightforward drunken words made Yulili's heart flutter. With her cheeks blushing, she gently pushed him and said, "Stop it. There are outsiders here." "Yulili, I love you. I love you so much. What should I do? Are you poisonous?" Ha! His drunken words made Yulili's heart beat faster and faster. Is this the legendary words spoken after drinking? She had never seen or heard such words from Oming. Oming's eyes were full of tenderness and honey as he looked at her. His beautiful eyes clearly reflected Yulili. Oming leaned toward her, raised his big hand, pressed her head, and kissed her. Yulili was a little resistant and subconsciously looked in the direction of Shenjilia. She wanted to break away from Oming, but Oming was drunk, and his strength was even more amazing. Shenjilia looked a little embarrassed, but at the same time, he felt a little annoyed. After all, Oming was his future brother-in-law. Although Shenjilia knew that Oming had a mistress at home, being kissed so openly with a mistress would make him feel uncomfortable. But what could he do? At that moment, Shenjilia felt extremely awkward. It wasn't just because of his current situation, but also because of his current status. What should he do? Should he go and beat him up? However, he was not very angry. It was that girl who turned out to be Oming's mistress, which made Shenjilia feel a little regretful. After taking a look, Shenjilia quietly turned around and reached out to close the door behind him. "I love you too," Yulili said softly and took the initiative to look up at him. Oming wasn't very conscious, but he knew who the woman he was holding was. Hearing her words, he chuckled softly, carried her to the sofa, and sat down. Oming hugged her and lay on the sofa with a satisfied smile on his lips. He closed his eyes and pulled her into his embrace. I highly recommend my new book, 99 Days of Hidden Marriage. Chief, please be reserved. It's super good on the surface. He was a cold-hearted young master who was loyal to his country, but in secret, he was an all-powerful and mysterious monarch. She schemed step by step, cheated him of all his first times, left all his property, and ran away. Unexpectedly, the next day, she was brought to the church with a knife. He announced in a loud voice, "Marry or die." Chapter 9:16. Oming held her and lay on the sofa with a satisfied smile on his lips. He closed his eyes and suckled her in his arms. One night, Yulili was sore all over. The sofa was too small to accommodate both of them. But Oming held her all night, and Yulili didn't dare to move easily. Throughout the night, Both of them maintained the same position, and their bodies were stiff. Oh Ming had a splitting headache. When he woke up, he was holding the woman in his arms and was a little confused. The clothes on his upper body were still intact, but there was nothing on his lower body. There was a smooth touch in his arms. Oh Ming gently moved, and Yu Lily woke up. Feeling the softness in his arms, Oh Ming was a little reluctant to let her go. He held her tightly and whispered, "How did I come back last night?" Yu Lily heard this and was a little dumbfounded. She elbowed him back and said, "You still have the nerve to ask." She briefly explained what happened, but Oh Ming listened with a blank face. "Did you forget?" Yu Lily looked at him and was a little disappointed. Oh Ming also shook his head and said, "I forgot, but there is one thing I remember very clearly." "What?" Yu Lily asked curiously. Oh Ming leaned over, gently pressed her down and said, "Is your coldness cured?" Yu Lily blushed, and before she could speak, Oh Ming hugged her tightly and bent his head to kiss her. Dense hot kisses fell on Yu Lily's collarbone and neck. The traces of last night were still clearly in front of her, and the smile on Oh Ming's face widened. Entering, Yu Lily let out a cry of surprise. Her legs were folded, and she gritted her teeth to bear him. The sofa swayed with their movements, but Yu Lily had no feeling of last night, and even some pain. It was not the same feeling as last night. Frowning, Yu Lily pushed him away. At the same time, there was a trace of sticky blood. Oh Ming was stunned and asked, "Are you bleeding?" Yu Lily was also a little confused. She reached out and touched it, and there was indeed blood. Her waist was also a little sore. She thought it was because she maintained the same position all night, but now it seemed that it was. Aunt Flo calculating the time. Aunt menstruation seemed to have been delayed. Under normal circumstances, it should have happened the day before yesterday or the day before yesterday. Looking at Oh Ming's obviously broken expression, she smiled apologetically and said, "It seems like I'm on my period." The corners of Oh Ming's lips twitched as he felt like he was about to be blown away by the wind. Yu Lily felt a little guilty and shrank her head. All of a sudden, Yu Lily looked up and shouted, "What time is it now?" Looking at the time, it was already past 8 in the morning. "It's over. It's over." Yu Lily hurriedly put on her clothes and said, "It's too late for work. What should I do? The editor-in-chief doesn't like me. If he finds out, he will fire me directly. It's all your fault." When Oh Ming heard that, he frowned and looked at her. "The chief editor is against you? Why?" "How would I know why? I was there to interview for the position of assistant editor, but the chief editor insisted that I go to the front desk. He even gave me a look as if I was taking advantage of him. Oh my God, this is ridiculous." Chapter 9:17. No, if I ask for leave, Editor-in-Chief Zhou will deal with me. I don't want to lose this job. Yu Lily shouted as she put on her clothes. She looked at the time. It was almost 9 o'clock. It would take at least half an hour to get there. Yu Lily felt that her life was bleak. She sat on the sofa in despair and shouted, "It's over. I'm doomed to be late." Oh Ming looked at her timid appearance and felt helpless. Yu Lily didn't notice the change in Oh Ming's expression. She quickly changed her clothes, put on a sanitary pad, picked up her bag, and ran. But when she started running, Yu Lily suddenly felt sore all over. Damn it. It was not only because she didn't sleep well last night, but also because of her period and the crazy morning. Yu Lily took the subway to the company and was ready to be scolded by Editor-in-Chief Zhou. Gasping, Yu Lily looked at the time. Yu Lily knew that she couldn't escape the scolding, so she ran to Editor-in-Chief Zhou's office. Seeing Editor-in-Chief Zhou sitting at the desk, she closed her eyes and shouted, "Editor-in-Chief Zhou, I'm sorry I'm late." Her voice was loud and full of infinite sincerity. However, the storm that she imagined did not come as expected. Yu Lily quietly opened her eyelids and looked forward. Editor-in-Chief Zhou seemed to be in a heavy mood. Staring at Yu Lily. Yu Lily felt her hair stand on end. She shrunk her head and said, "Today Did you punch in?" Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at her, and her voice was indescribably soft. Yu Lily closed her eyes, shook her head again and said, "Not yet. Go and punch in. There are a lot of contracts waiting for you to review today. ZU asked for leave today." Go and study with Yi Qianqian. Yu Lily was a little stunned. Looking at the kind editor-in-chief Zhou in front of her, she felt that the sun was rising from the west. She didn't scold me? Why? She actually asked me to study with Yi Qianqian? My God, is today the end of the world? However, the more editor-in-chief Zhou behaved like this, the more Yu Lily dared not act rashly. Looking at editor-in-chief Zhou, Yu Lily asked, "What about the receptionist?" "The staff at the front desk will be here next week. You have to learn first before you can be a good editor. Go and clock in. Since this is the first time you've been late, I won't deduct your salary. If there's a next time, I won't let you off so easily." Yu Lily felt a little confused. Today's editor-in-chief Zhou is too easy to talk to. However, Yu Lily couldn't have asked for more. After nodding, she ran away. When Yu Lily left, editor-in-chief Zhou immediately breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at the young face on the computer screen and said with a smile, "Special Assistant Sue, as you can see, I have nothing to say about Yu Lily. I hope you won't complain to the president." I didn't know that she had a relationship with the president. It was Miss Shen who asked me to do this. If I had known, I wouldn't have listened to her. When Su Chung heard this, he shook his head and said, "It doesn't matter. Go to the Human Resource Department at the headquarters to go through the formalities." Assistant. Chapter 9:18. He didn't even give her a chance to explain or redeem herself. Editor-in-chief Zhou's face suddenly turned pale, and she couldn't believe it. Editor-in-chief Zhou's strength was beyond doubt. But the most important point was that Editor-in-chief Zhou knew how to read people's words and expressions. Although it was a bit despicable, such a method was undoubtedly time-tested. But, who knew that I would fall into such a trap? Could it be that the face of the future CEO's wife was not as important as that of a special assistant? Although Yu Lily was appointed by Special Assistant Su to stay, she is still the future wife of the president. How could Special Assistant Su do this? The more Editor-in-chief Zhou thought about it, the angrier she became. Special Assistant Su wants to abuse his power and fire me? Ha, what a joke. In any case, she was considered a wily old fox. How could she be fired so easily? Editor-in-chief Zhou picked up the phone and dialed Shen Manting's number. Editor-in-chief Zhou felt so wrong that her eyes turned red. Hearing that the phone was picked up, Editor-in-chief Zhou immediately began to feel wronged. Editor-in-chief Zhou told the story roughly, and even added oil and vinegar. Finally she asked, "What should we do, Miss Shen? Special Assistant Su has gone too far." Shen Manting seemed to chuckle and said, "I can't control this. After all, I also have to look at his mood. Maybe you can pretend to be pitiful and ask Yu Lily for help. Maybe she will sympathize with you and help you so that you won't be fired." Yi Qianqian was speechless. "Miss Shen, I'm doing this to help you. If I didn't help you, how could I have transferred Yu Lily to the front desk? How could I have targeted her again and again? I know that you installed a listening device in the thing you gave her last time. Do you think she'll hate you to death if I tell her?" Editor-in-chief Zhou's voice was a bit gloomy. "She doesn't seem to be on guard against you at all. If I remind her, what do you think she will do?" Yu Lily stood outside and heard those words clearly. She stood there in disbelief. Subconsciously, she glanced at the beautiful little furball hanging on her bag. That thing was really beautiful, and Yu Lily liked it very much. However, such a small thing actually had a listening device in it? Also, did Chief Editor Zhou just say Miss Shen? Is she Ming's fiancé, Shen Manting? Yu Lily gritted her teeth angrily. It turned out that Shen Manting had already gotten close to her and was targeting her. Poor Yu Lily. She didn't even know it. If it wasn't for the fact that she wanted to come over and thank him, she would probably be in even more trouble in the next few days. Yu Lily angrily plucked the furball and planned to throw it away. But then, as if he had thought of something, he retracted the little furball. Since it was a listening device, it should be able to hear everything from her side, right? In other words, wherever furball was, all sounds could be clearly transmitted? Thinking of this, Yu Lily actually felt that it was a little fun. The corners of her lips curled up, and traces of playfulness flashed across her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. She had already delivered herself to his doorstep, so why should he let her off so easily? It was time to recoup the losses. Death. Chapter 919. Looking at Editor-in-Chief Zhou inside, Yu Lily turned around and returned to her seat. Putting down her bag, Yu Lily went back to Editor-in-Chief Zhou's office. Editor-in-Chief Zhou might have just finished a phone call. Her eyes were red. When she saw Yu Lily, she sniffed and looked like she was about to cry. Yu Lily walked in and watched Editor-in-Chief Zhou close the door. Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at her actions and felt a little inexplicable. At the same time, she was a little angry and asked, "What do you want to do?" Yu Lily did not answer. After sitting down, she looked around, then picked up her mobile phone and typed, "You don't have a listening device in here, do you?" Editor-in-Chief Zhou was stunned. She looked around and found that Shen Manting had sent gifts everywhere. It was hard to say. But seeing Yu Lily like this, she knew that she might have already known something. Editor-in-Chief Zhou stopped hiding and gave her a look. "Let's talk outside." The two reached an agreement for a while, and it was indescribably harmonious. Editor-in-Chief Zhou took Yu Lily to the rooftop of the company. In addition to her clothes, she did not even bring her mobile phone. She said, "Tell me, what do you want to say?" "You just called Shen Manting, didn't you? I heard everything just now. Are you in some kind of trouble that you can't solve?" When Editor-in-Chief Zhou heard Yu Lily's question, she felt a little hypocritical. She sneered and said, "What do you think? I really didn't expect you to have such a good relationship with Special Assistant Sue. Now Su Cheng, that B** starred, wants me to leave." Su Cheng? Hearing the name, Yu Lily was stunned. Su Cheng. Wasn't he the young man who worked with O Ming in the capital? It turned out to be him. So, her work was arranged by O Ming? Yu Lily suddenly felt depressed. It turned out to be like this. Why did he ask you to leave? You went to Shen Manting? Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at her suspiciously and asked, "Do you really not know? I should have thought of it long ago." At that time, when the website was newly opened, every editor was very idle. There was no need for an assistant editor at all. Why would there be a need to recruit people for no reason? Humph. That Shan Yu should be helping you to cover up. It was only logical for her to let you in. It's a pity that I didn't know. If I had known, I wouldn't have targeted you like that. Shen Manting asked me to take good care of you. Say, do you want revenge? I have a way to deal with her. Yu Lily already had an idea in her mind. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Editor-in-Chief Zhou. Maybe I can convince Special Assistant Sue to let you stay. Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at her suspiciously and nodded. With the help of O Ming's mother, Shen Manting was now working at the headquarters of the O Group. At that moment, she was having a regular department meeting. However, this roundabout meeting of department heads was really boring. Shen Manting placed her phone under the table and played with it. Suddenly, she received a multimedia message. It was Chief Editor Zhou's. It wasn't a photo, but a short video. Looking at the cover, it was dark. Chapter 920. Shen Manting was disdainful. She knew that these words were just a gimmick. However, she was attracted by this gimmick. Shen Manting clicked on the download button, but before she clicked on the play button, the video popped up automatically. Shen Manting was shocked and subconsciously wanted to turn it off. However, she couldn't control it. The volume was instantly turned up, as if it had been poisoned. It was completely out of Shen Manting's control. A loud sound rang out, and it was actually a pa-pa-pa sound that made people blush and their hearts beat rapidly. In an instant, everyone's eyes fell on Shen Manting. Shen Manting blushed and hurried to get the phone. This sound was accompanied by a woman's scream. Brother, don't. The voice was very loud, and it was particularly loud in the quiet department meeting room. Everyone looked at Shen Manting with a strange look in their eyes. Shen Manting felt like dying. She plugged the speaker, but it didn't work at all. Not only could she not turn down the volume, but she also couldn't press the button to turn off the phone. Shen Manting, you've gone too far. Don't you know we're in a meeting now? The department supervisor was furious and slammed the table. How can you watch this kind of thing during working hours? You're a woman. Don't you have any shame? The department supervisor was originally dissatisfied with Shen Manting. Because of her connections, Shen Manting's position in the department was second only to the supervisor when she came in. Other people might not be able to climb to this position for many years, but Shen Manting was the president's fiancé. But now, there was finally a chance to make a fuss. How could she not seize it? You're a woman. Even if you're the president's fiancé, so what? You're too shameless. It's not me. Shen Manting wanted to die. Listening to the supervisor's scolding, her face turned green and white. I didn't mean it. It's you. Take out the phone. The department supervisor stretched out his hand. Hurry up. Shen Manting took out the phone, and the passionate voice on it became louder. Shen Manting couldn't turn it off, and the picture on it was also presented in front of everyone. The scale was very big. The supervisor was furious and said, "Are you that thirsty? Look, I can't turn it off. I just received a document. Someone must have deliberately sent it to me to frame me." Shen Manting roared, her face as red as blood. The department head casually pressed a button and the video was turned off. Shen Manting was shocked and couldn't believe it. How could that be? What else do you have to say? I will tell the higher-ups to criticize you by name. Write me a self-criticism report before tomorrow. The supervisor threw her phone back to her and said sternly. Shen Manting held her phone in a daze. He casually pressed a button, and the video actually ran out on its own. It was very high profile. The department head was furious and roared, "Get out, get out!" Her colleagues snickered. Shen Manting was on the verge of tears. She wanted to turn off the video, but she couldn't. Shen Manting lifted the lid of the cup in front of her and threw the phone into it. The phone was soaked in water. After flashing a few times, there was no sound. Shen Manting walked out, her eyes red with anger. "Zhou, you're finished." Chapter 921. As for Editor-in-Chief Zhou, she didn't know what had happened after she lent the phone to Yu Lily. Yu Lily was in a good mood after she implanted the virus and dragged Shen Manting's phone number out of the blacklist. Editor-in-Chief Zhou only knew that Yu Lily had helped her stay in Eurasian Comics, so she was grateful to Yu Lily. Shen Manting also knew that Editor-in-Chief Zhou framed her, but she wouldn't burn the fire of war on Yu Lily. She killed with a borrowed knife, but she didn't get involved. Yu Lily was in a good mood. Looking at the little furball, Yu Lily took it off and put it in the drawer. Returning the phone to Editor-in-Chief Zhou, Yu Lily could easily see the current status of Shen Manting's phone through the computer. It's broken. Gee, in order to stop the phone from ringing, she actually broke the phone. That's amazing. But it doesn't matter, I still have a backup plan. After entering Shen Manting's number, Yu Lily quickly set up the location. Even if Shen Manting's phone was destroyed, the number should not be changed. From now on, I just have to wait for the rabbit. Sure enough, Shen Manting's phone number was turned back on in the evening. But obviously, it had changed to a different device. This model looked good on the outside, but fortunately, it didn't use the best security system. After Yu Lily locked the number, she hacked into the phone. There were many social platforms that were bound to this phone number. Yu Lily directly hacked into WeChat and scanned the address book. After thinking about it, she exited and opened a software that was rarely used by ordinary people, but it was necessary. After hacking, she installed a monitoring virus in it. Isn't she monitoring me? Then let me have a taste of being monitored. But unfortunately, Shen Manting seemed to have a party after work, eating and sleeping, and there seemed to be nothing else to listen to. When talking to her best friend, there were many black spots. Several times, Yu Lily heard it and laughed. However, it was useless. Yu Lily called Su Cheng and pleaded for Editor-in-Chief Zhou without any integrity. As expected, just after Editor-in-Chief Zhou was almost fired, Yu Lily's life became much better. The next day, Yu Lily finished the last frame and gave the drawing to Sissai. However, Sissy still didn't know that Yu Lily was Li Xiaoyu. When Sissy saw the drawing, she was stunned. Looking at the style of the drawing and the idea of the plot, she asked, "Did you draw all this yourself? Your own original design?" Yu Lily. Yes. Based on her own story, Yu Lily painted an orphan who went astray and then met a domineering president. However, comics were still comics. Yu Lily tried her best to beautify the details and facts. The first episode was about the meeting of the male and female leads. The name of the comic was Transactional Love. The male lead was called Xiao, and the female lead was called Li Xiaoyu. The title of the first episode was Dirty Deals. Yu Lily could clearly see that Yi Qianqian was reading the comic, but she didn't say anything. Chapter 922. Yi Qianqian's excitement soon aroused the curiosity of other colleagues. They gathered around and asked, "What's going on?" Yi Qianqian mysteriously closed the comic and said, "I feel like I've picked up a treasure. I've recruited an amazing artist, and it's even an original work. No, I'm going to use this as a promotional comic." As he spoke, he clicked open the chat box with Li Xiaoyu and sent her a message. "Sisai, when can you give me the second episode?" Yu Lily silently clicked on the chat box and replied to a message. "I draw very slowly, and it will take about a week. Sisai, the quality is really good. I plan to make your comic the main comic. I will promote it first. Can you give me the second episode as soon as possible?" Yueli. Yes. They happily reached an agreement, and Yi Qianqian did things without hesitation. In an instant, he had contacted all the departments and started to promote the comic. Because it was a new website, there were not many high-quality comics received. As soon as the comic was launched, the promotion forum and Weibo immediately exploded. The technical department was surprised to find that in less than 24 hours, the number of downloads was tens of thousands higher than usual. There was a huge cheer in the office for a while. Yu Lily saw it and was also ecstatic. On the third day, Yi Qianqian told Yu Lily, "The promotion effect is better than expected." "Amazing." Yueli. Hey, thank you. Sisai. The company has decided to give you a gift. What do you want? Yueli. A digital screen. My current digital screen is second-hand, and it often runs out of power and lags. If possible, can you give me a new digital screen? Sisai. Okay, give me the address. Yu Lily directly sent the address. Yi Qianqian saw the address and was a little surprised. She said, "Hey, I found that the author of Love Transaction lives in Kingstown. It's so close. It's only half an hour from here. Wow, it's also a rich area. This location is so expensive." Yu Lily looked down at the contract and pretended not to hear. Shan Yu passed by Yu Lily with a cup of coffee in her hand. She looked up and saw a chat box with Sisai on the desktop of Yu Lily's computer. She looked down and saw that Yu Lily had sent an address to Xueqi. But before Shan Yu could see what it was, Yu Lily turned it off. Yu Lily turned her head and looked over. Shan Yu smiled at her and walked away with her coffee. Shan Yu felt a little strange and glanced at Yi Qianqian's computer next to her. However, Yi Qianqian had already closed the chat box, so Shan Yu didn't see anything. However, he felt that it was a little strange. What is the relationship between Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian? My period came suddenly, but it left slowly. On the 6th day after her period came, she finally showed signs of leaving. Yu Lily made herself a cup of milk tea and sat in front of the computer to read her comics. But after looking at it for a long time, he was a little tired of it. He picked up his cell phone and opened Shen Manting's cell phone. The other side seemed to be on the phone. Yu Lily turned on the speaker and took a sip of milk tea. Chapter 923. How could that be? Wedding dresses are designed to keep you warm. You just need to be a good bride. Yu Lily's brain buzzed. The wedding date is set. On the 23rd of December? Isn't that soon? It's already the end of November on the lunar calendar. It's too fast. How could it be? It's so sudden. Yu Lily wasn't prepared at all. Besides, didn't O Ming say that he would marry her? He would marry her because he didn't like Shen Manting, did he? Why didn't he make it clear to me? Did O Ming count as having a foot in two boats? Yu Lily, who had been in a good mood, suddenly collapsed. She looked at the time. It was past 8 o'clock in the evening. However, O Ming hadn't come back yet. She called O Ming. O Ming seemed to be very busy. Many people were talking in English. "Hello. O Ming, are you home?" I'll be late. I'm still busy. Go to bed early. Okay. Yu Lily hung up the phone and sighed. She packed up the manga and threw it to Sisai. She went to bed early. When Oh Ming came back, it was already midnight. Yu Lily didn't want to talk to him. She was going to ask him about it the next day, but when she woke up the next day, she found that he had gone out again. The position next to her was still warm, but she couldn't touch him. However, it was worth celebrating that when the second episode of Love Transaction was released, it ignited the craze of chasing the latest chapters. Because of such a comic, the traffic of Eurasian comics reached an all-time high, and Yi Qianqian became a hero in the company. All the colleagues and employees of the company went out to party, singing, drinking, and playing dice. Yu Lily was a very open person, so she played with Yi Qianqian. However, Yi Qianqian's drinking capacity was very poor, and she lost a lot of times when playing dice. The first few times, Yi Qianqian drank all the dice, but soon she couldn't stand it. Later, Yu Lily helped her drink a few glasses, and then they got drunk together. Yi Qianqian asked her sister to pick her up, but she waited in the room for a long time, but she didn't come. He was furious. When he tried to call Yi Yu, the call didn't go through even once. Yu Lily had a good tolerance for alcohol, so she could handle it. After sending Yi Qianqian back, she took a taxi home. Back home, Oh Ming sat in the living room working. When he saw her come back stinking of alcohol, he frowned with dissatisfaction. He closed the computer, frowned, and asked, "Why did you drink so much?" Yu Lily did drink a little too much, but for Yu Lily, this level only made her a little dizzy. When she saw Oh Ming, Yu Lily rushed over to him and shouted, "Oh Ming, I'm back." He caught her firmly with both hands and held her in his arms. As soon as he lowered his head, he could smell the smell of cigarettes and alcohol on her. Smelling it, he felt even more dissatisfied and asked, "How much did you drink?" Chapter 924. Oh Ming picked her up and said helplessly, "Yes, I will. I think so too, but I can't tell them. If I tell them, they will look at me differently. What if they all fall in love with me? What will you do then?" Yu Lai giggled and put his arms around Oh Ming's neck, grinning brightly. Oh Ming was also amused by her and walked toward the room with her in his arms. Yu Lily habitually hugged him and kissed him, saying, "Oh Ming, what do you think our relationship is now?" The ancients said that alcohol could boost one's courage. This sentence was really true. If Yu Lily had said such a sentence in the past, she would not have dared to say it. But now, she said it so naturally. However, it was also after she said it that Yu Lily felt that something was wrong. Oh Ming looked at her, and there was an obscure light in his beautiful peach blossom eyes that Yu Lily could not understand. Seeing the change in Oh Ming's eyes, Yu Lily's heartbeat involuntarily accelerated. This issue was a bit sensitive. Yu Lily had never known what their relationship was. They lived under the same roof, but they were not husband and wife. On the surface, they seemed to be together, but he still had a fiancé waiting in the open. It was impossible to say that she did not mind. Yu Lily was actually a very possessive person. Although she did not say it, she actually cared about it more than anyone else. But so what? Yu Lily still did not dare to say it. She was afraid. She was afraid that Oh Ming would think that she was too nosy and talk to her like before in the capital. Every word that came out of his mouth was like the sharpest of thorns, stabbing into her heart and making her feel pain. At that time, Yu Lily was afraid that she could not help but want to escape, so she simply ignored it. She wanted to stay by Oh Ming's side, even as a lover. As long as she was with him. Yu Lily looked at Oh Ming with a pair of eyes, a little drunk, and said with a smile, "Forget it, you don't have to answer, I know." Oh Ming lowered his eyes, and his eyes became deeper. He gently put her on the bed and lowered his head to kiss her. The smell of beer came, but Oh Ming did not dislike it at all. He gently kissed her and gradually moved down. Yu Lily raised her hands, crossed her legs, and closed her eyes. She actually fell asleep? Seeing her like this, Oh Ming chuckled. He helped her take off her coat and sweater, tucked her in, and planted a kiss on her forehead. He turned off the lights, turned around, and walked out to continue working. Not long after Oh Ming left, Yu Lily suddenly opened her eyes. She got up and found some clothes to take a shower. By the time he finished showering, half an hour had already passed. Oh Ming leaned against the headboard and watched her walk out. He waved at her and said, "Come here." Yu Lily obediently walked over. Her cheeks were still a little hot, with the obvious red of alcohol. "Do you know who I am? My man." Yu Lily smiled and leaned over to hug him. When Ming heard those 3 words, he was in a good mood. He held her in his arms and asked, "Have you left?" "Well." Yu Lily pretended to be confused and hesitated. She knew what he was asking. She left, but she did not want to. After some hesitation, he shook his head and said, "No." Chapter 925. Yu Lily was so directly exposed that she was a little embarrassed. She shrank her neck and pretended to be confused. "What did you say?" "Leave." Still pretending. Ming directly lowered his head, lifted her clothes and bit her. "You are asking for a beating," Yu Lily exclaimed. She blushed and said, "You are so annoying." "I am annoying? Ha!" Ming's actions became more rough. He sucked her neck hard and asked vaguely, "Why do you hate me?" Aware of his actions, Yu Lily felt even more bored. She half closed her eyes and said, "I'm sleepy." Ming's actions stopped. He looked at her with a pair of burning eyes and said, "Then you go to sleep." Yu Lily really closed her eyes and ignored Ming. Ming was a little unhappy. He teased everywhere, but Yu Lily really closed her eyes and did not give him any response. "Stop it. I am so sleepy." Yu Lily reached out and patted him. Ming's eyes became darker. Yu Lily suddenly opened her eyes wide and clamped her legs. She shouted, "What are you doing?" "Ah!" Yu Lily only felt disgusted and shouted, "You are so dirty. Don't do this." Ming did not listen to her. He kissed her a few times, but Yu Lily struggled even more. Yu Lily struggled with her legs and shouted, Ming, you are so disgusting. I don't like it. I don't like it at all." Ming was a little annoyed. He pushed his body up, pinched her face, and lowered his head to kiss her. Yu Lily felt even more disgusted. He had just kissed her there. How could it be? Yu Lily didn't know whether it was because of the alcohol or something else, but her stomach was tumbling. After pushing him away, she retched. Ming's eyelids twitched, and he was furious. He straightened her legs, turned her face back with his big hand, and said, "What do you mean?" Yu Lily's stomach was full of anger. Being twisted by him, she couldn't struggle. Yu Lily's face turned red, and she turned her head and vomited. The vomit flowed down her cheek and onto Ming's hand. Ming's face became more and more gloomy. This woman actually vomited. After he let go of her, Yu Lily couldn't hold it in any longer. She lay on the edge of the bed and retched. It was full of the smell of wine. Ming frowned deeply. Looking at Yu Lily's appearance, he pulled up his clothes and walked away. Bang! The door was slammed shut, and Yu Lily suddenly shivered. Wiping the corner of her mouth, Yu Lily got up, opened the door and walked out, only to see Ming slam the door. Bang! The sound of the door slamming made Yu Lily freeze in place. He seemed to be really angry. What to do? Yu Lily knew very well that she didn't want to vomit because she drank too much, but because of his touch. Under the influence of alcohol, Yu Lily couldn't help herself. What to do? She seemed to have angered him. Ming felt a little scared. He didn't dare to stay any longer. He was afraid that he would strangle her to death in a fit of rage. After staying in the hotel for a night, Ming got up early the next morning and headed home. Chapter 926. Ming's heart seemed to be pinched by something, and his heart was aching. He went forward and gently pushed her, shouting, "You!" Yu Lily was sleepy. When she looked up, she saw Ming's face. Only then did Ming see her face clearly, and his heart ached even more fiercely. Yu Lily's eyes were swollen like walnuts. When she first saw him, she pursed her lips and burst into tears. Yu Lily rushed forward and shouted, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Yu Lily held his waist with her hands, and her head arched against his chest. With a weak cry, she held him tightly. She was afraid. Afraid of what? However, unconsciously, Ming's mood, which had been depressed all night, quietly relaxed. He helped her up, and Yu Lily felt pain all over her body. Being pulled by him, the pain was so painful that she gasped. Oh Ming touched her face and found that her body was frighteningly cold. He was a little angry and said, "Don't tell me that you stayed here all night?" Get dressed." Oh Ming's face was ugly. He pulled her up and said, "Get dressed, and I'll take you to see a doctor." As he spoke, he walked her into the room. Yu Lily was pulled, and her body was cold. Today is Saturday. Many experts should not be at work. And I don't want to go to the hospital. Go to see a psychiatrist. Oh Ming pushed her into the room, then went to the cloakroom to find her coat, and said, "Go directly to the doctor, not the hospital." Psychiatrist? Yes. Oh Ming's movements stopped, and subconsciously thought of the last time he was in the capital. He was depressed and said, "Sexual apathy is also caused by psychological factors. Luo Zhan's brother is a psychiatrist. Although he is a little romantic, he is more reliable at critical moments." Luo Zhan has a brother? Yu Lily looked at him with a blank face. "Well, get dressed, and I'll call him." Luo Ran's annual leave was over, and during this time, he ate, played, and had fun. It was not easy to go back to work, but he was tired after 2 days. He was lying in the room when Luo Zhan woke him up. He almost slapped him. Luo Zhan avoided him easily, smiled, and said, "Big brother, there is business, private work. Do you still remember Oh Ming?" Oh Ming? Hearing this name, Luo Ran immediately got up from the bed. Oh Ming? Yes, my good friend, the young master of the O group, is very rich. Luo Ran came to his senses and lit a cigarette. He was a little surprised. Why is he looking for me? I don't know. You'll know when he comes. Anyway, he will pay a lot of money. You have to take a good look at him. Just as he finished speaking, the doorbell rang. Luo Ran's eyes widened as he roared and threw a punch. F***CK. So fast. Are you trying to trick me? Luo Zhan quickly dodged and said, "I'll open the door." Yu Lily walked in with Oh Ming, and Luo Zhan immediately saw her swollen eyes. Shaking his head, Luo Zhan opened the door and let them in. He shouted, "Brother, they are here." Luo ran. Chapter 928. When Yu Lily heard that, she answered honestly, "I broke up with Oh Ming more than 4 years ago." You haven't had a boyfriend in 4 years? No. Don't you think it's a little unfair? I only had one man. Luo Ran laughed with a teasing look in his eyes. Yu Lily looked up at him and asked, "Why would it be unfair? Wouldn't it be unfair to go out and mess around?" Luo Ran heard such an answer and laughed out loud. Don't you want to try other men? Brother, don't poach me, okay? Be professional, okay? Luo Zhan's voice came in with a warning. Obviously, he was threatened by Oh Ming. Yu Lily heard it and laughed out loud. Luo Ran stopped flirting and coughed softly. To be honest, I'm a psychology major, but I'm not an expert in this area. However, I happen to have a classmate from the capital. Why don't I ask my friend to take a look at you? Friend. Yu Lily blinked and nodded. As Luo Ran spoke, he had already picked up the phone and called the legendary friend. Old Shen, there is a private job here. Do you want to take it? The other party is a great beauty. Okay, I'll wait for you. At my house. Well, I'll wait for you. Well, bye. Oh Ming looked at the movement inside from the outside and felt a little strange. He looked at Luo Zhan and asked, "Is your brother serious? Are you sure he is a professional?" Hearing Oh Ming's doubt, Luo Zhan nodded seriously and said, "My brother is an expert in his current hospital. There are many people who ask him to see them, but he specializes in things like autism in children. Anyway, he doesn't seem to have much to do with this." Hearing that, Oh Ming still had some doubts and looked at him. Luo Zhan shrugged and said, "Don't worry. If my brother says there is no problem, then there must be no problem." Oh Ming was skeptical. He looked inside thoughtfully and said, "I hope so." About 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. As soon as he heard it, Luo Zhan knew it must be the expert. He hurried to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a pink dress. When the expert saw Luo Zhan, he smiled brightly and said, "Hey, old classmate, we meet again." Luo Zhan was scared by his enthusiasm and quickly waved his hand. But before he spoke, he heard the expert say, "But why is your taste getting worse and worse? You used to dress like this at home?" Luo Zhan. A critical hit of 100,000 points. "It's you?" O Ming's voice was surprised. The man in the pink suit looked at O Ming and seemed to be a little happy. He said, "Hey, why is my brother-in-law here? Did you want to watch today? But I heard that the other party is a great beauty." O Ming's face darkened. He looked at him and said, "Your sister and I are not married yet. Don't call me that too early." Perhaps he would just dump her. Shen Jilia shook his head and said, "That's not interesting. When your father asked our family for help, that's not what he said. He said that he would agree to any condition." "You're already engaged to my sister. How can you run away now?" "Ming," Shen said. Shen, how ti what? Shen, ti. Chapter 929. That's my brother. Luo Ran yawned and said, "Come on, the patient is inside." Yu Lily clearly heard the movement outside. Especially when she heard Shen Jilia call O Ming brother-in-law, she had already guessed a little. Then, the sound of leather shoes came from behind, and the footsteps were different from O Ming's. Obviously, it was the expert who had just come. When Shen Jilia saw Yu Lily, he was both expected and surprised. When he saw O Ming, Shen Jilia had already guessed that the patient was likely to be Yu Lily. But after all, he was good at solving psychological problems between men and women. "Did Yu Lily have psychological problems?" Shen Jilia walked over, looked at Yu Lily, and raised his eyebrows with a smile. "It's a small world, miss Yu. I didn't expect that we are not only neighbors, but also friends of each other's friends. The world is really small." Yu Lily felt a little guilty about Shen Jilia. After all, when she was in the capital, she cheated him of a lot of money. Although Shen Jilia didn't seem to want to retaliate, what if? Hearing his words, Yu Lily felt even more guilty. She stood up, looked at Luo Ran and asked, "Is this the expert you mentioned?" "Yes." Luo Ran nodded. Although he is young, he is a psychopath. Now he has graduated from the master's degree in psychology and is studying for a doctorate, right? Shen Jilia nodded, looked at Yu Lily, and said with great interest, "Miss Yu, if you doubt me, you can go to Jinghua University in the capital to check my information. You are welcome to verify my identity. This is my business card." Yu Lily took it and glanced at it. It seems that he can really bluff people. "But before you verify my identity, Luo Ran, can you briefly tell me about this lady's condition?" Shen Jilia looked at Luo Ran. Luo Ran played with a pocket watch in his hand, leaned on the table, and briefly explained what he had just asked Yu Lily. Yu Lily always felt that Shen Jilia was a little unreliable. After all, people who could be deceived by bartenders were not very smart. What's more, Yu Lily felt that this man was shameless enough to chase after a girl. Most importantly, he was her neighbor and Shen Manting's younger brother. In case he wanted to do something to her, it would be too convenient. Yu Lily didn't like this feeling. She looked at Shen Jilia and Luo Ran, stood up, and said, "Why don't I go to the hospital on Monday? At most, I can take a day off. I still think it's too troublesome." It was obvious that she didn't want Shen Jilia to see it. Yu Lily's intentions made Luo Ran feel a little embarrassed. After all, Shen Jilia was called over by Luo Ran. Wasn't it obvious that he wasn't giving Luo Ran any face? He shrugged and said, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, I have a lecture at Kingstown Psychology University on Monday. If you are interested, you can come and listen." "Sit down." O Ming walked in and pressed Yu Lily down. He said, "Although this guy doesn't look very reliable, he is still a professional person. I don't think he will mess around. Isn't that right, Jilia?" You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.